Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
After a moment of silence, the tails of all the ships of the Yue fleet suddenly burst out with dazzling blue light. With the number of fleets, this sudden burst of light can almost be compared with the stars in the galaxy. Everyone thought that Yue was going to do something big. But the next moment, Yue's fleet began to accelerate normally and flew towards the space station. The blue light just now seemed to be just a flash of an LED light. However, at this time, almost no one was bothered by why Yue didn't take action immediately, but took action after the light flashed. Everyone's attention was focused on the approaching Yue fleet. Chen Ming also became spirited as Yue moved. He had to concentrate and devote all his attention to the dangerous behavior he chose on his own initiative. After all, there is no such thing as zero risk and high return in this world. Even the weapons and equipment that need to repair the panel need to consume his mental power. If he doesn't do something risky but also very profitable, such as wandering outside the battle zone to look for opportunities, he might as well go back to Reimu to farm. As the Afterglow fleet gradually approached, the space station suddenly began to glow with a deep blue glow. A blue translucent spherical barrier gradually unfolded around the space station, protecting the space station. This is the second thing Chen Ming wants to get besides the hyperspace channel system, the shield generator. Once he has it, Chen Ming's ships will be one-sided when fighting with non-military ships. However, this thing is not like the hyperspace channel system, which has been popularized. In most cases, it is a controlled item. Only a large company like Cinda can have the right to use and develop shields through various relationships. And it also has the ability to protect the entire space station within the shield. At the same time as the space station shield was unfolded, the fleet that was originally staying near the space station suddenly began to move away from the protection range of the space station's shield and hid behind the space station. They did not take the initiative to go out, hiding behind the shield, waiting for a better time to fight. After all, the biggest advantage of the space station is the space station. Their battle naturally needs to cooperate with the space station. It is not the right way to rashly go out and fight with Yue's fleet. And now it is Yue who attacks the space station, not the space station that needs to attack Yue. As long as Yue's offensive can be delayed, the supporting military fleet will come sooner or later. Yue also knew that the offensive pressure was on them, and without any hesitation, they rushed straight to the space station. At the moment when both sides entered each other's range, the tachyon spheres on the three large load-bearing points of the Yue cruiser lit up a frightening azure light at the same time. Then, three high-energy azure particle torrents that lasted for 3 seconds crossed a quarter of the galaxy and bombarded the space station's fully deployed shield. The oscillating particle ripples spread across the shield sphere, making the entire shield look shaky but indestructible. After the three particle torrents stopped, the space station suddenly lit up with the same bright light, but the light flashing on the space station was dark purple. Two dark purple agitated particle torrents staggered out and directly passed through the shield protecting the space station. They did not attack the Afterglow cruiser, which was also protected by the shield, but each selected a destroyer as a target. The particle torrent instantly overloaded the shield of the destroyed destroyer. In the violent arcs that erupted all over the hull, the two Afterglow destroyers disappeared like fireworks in an instant. The space station was also equipped with large weapons such as tachyon spears, and there was more than one type. Chen Ming can now see that several large live ammunition weapons have been aimed at Yue's cruiser. Although live ammunition weapons do have irreparable weaknesses in space combat. However, live ammunition weapons still occupy a place in space naval battles and have been developing. The reason is that the destructiveness of live ammunition to the shield restraint position is far beyond the reach of energy weapons. Therefore, live ammunition weapons have developed several different types of live ammunition weapons many years ago as far as Chen Ming can remember. And there are two large live ammunition weapons that Chen Ming saw on the space station: Storm Needle and Gauss Cannon. The former launches a huge amount of high-speed magnetic needles, causing continuous high-frequency strikes on multiple points of the shield, which can quickly overload the shield. At the same time, the terrifying firing rate can also make up for the low hit rate of live ammunition weapons in space. And although it is a needle, each needle fired by the storm needle is about the thickness of Chen Ming's arm. This is a weapon from 30 years ago. Chen Ming is not sure what kind of development and improvement this weapon has undergone now. But there is no doubt that storm needles are more lethal today than they were 30 years ago. The Gauss cannon and storm needle are almost two extremes. They fire large, high-quality solid shells made of super heavy elemental metals. Through the continuous superposition of magnetic coils, they are accelerated to an extremely high degree in the simplest and crudest way. As long as they can hit, they will have a destructive power that is not on the same level as most weapons, and can even directly shatter some shields with low efficiency instead of overloading the shields. If it were not for the existence of a special phenomenon named the mass void effect. When any object is accelerated to the speed of light, its mass will be inexplicably lost, so that although there is an entity in observation, physical contact is impossible. Then the power of the Gauss cannon can be even stronger. In fact, this effect is also the premise for the civilian spacecraft of the human empire to reach the speed of light, but now it limits the power of the weapon. In short, there are a total of 4 of these 2 large solid ammunition weapons on the space station, all of which are locked on Yuwei's cruiser. Yuwei's cruiser immediately made evasive actions. But the spherical shield that completely protected the Yuwei cruiser might not be able to evade it. The Yuwei cruiser's shield was hit by countless needles, and there was a more violent fluctuation than the space station was hit by the tachyon spear just now. Unfortunately, the cruiser's maneuverability immediately increased a lot as its straight-line flight speed decreased. The more powerful Gauss cannon only hit once, and the spherical shield was dented. But unfortunately, there was no follow-up. Yuwei's cruiser was wandering at the limit of the range of both sides, and the weapons of the fixed space station were not so easy to hit it. It was definitely impossible to distinguish a result in a short time. So the burden of deciding the follow-up development fell on other ships. The main force had already started fighting, and Yuwei's small ships were gradually approaching. Naturally, the space station's fleet could no longer hide behind the space station's shield. They bypassed the firepower coverage of the front of the space station and rushed towards the Yuwei fleet that also avoided the cruiser's attack area. The large-scale battle has just begun. It was at this time that Chen Ming knew that his chance was coming. When small ships started fighting, there would be a lot of damage and chaos. This situation was the best environment for Chen Ming to fish in troubled waters. If he could really tow a Yuwei ship back, then Chen Ming's new spaceship would definitely be settled. However, Chen Ming also knew the danger. Once the Yuwei cruiser also chose to attack the small spaceship like the space station. The iron ore would have almost no ability to escape. So although there were other ships that had come out of the space station and stayed nearby, they couldn't help but approach the battlefield. But Chen Ming still lingered in his original position, observing the battlefield situation that the sensors kept sending back, looking for the right opportunity. Chen Ming was not like other spaceship pilots who put their lives on the fire. He was now in the basement of the Space Station Administration building, the safest in the entire space station. Such a safe environment was enough for him to analyze and think calmly and find the most favorable opportunity. Soon, the space station and Yuwei's destroyers and frigates approached to a sufficient distance for engagement. The arcs of energy beams and electromagnetic weapons flashed frequently when they were fired, and they broke out near the center of the space station and the cruiser. Almost as soon as the two sides met, the shields of more than a dozen ships were overloaded and directly destroyed by the firepower from other ships. And more ships began to stagger due to speed. The battle line that should have been maintained suddenly became chaotic. Chen Ming immediately realized that something was wrong. In a normal battle between ships, both sides should attack each other at the limit of their respective ranges, relying on continuous firepower suppression to break down the shields, and then a wave of pressure to destroy the enemy. But now, the battle line has become jagged. And Chen Ming just saw clearly that when the space station's ships were about to approach the range limit, they had obvious deceleration and change of direction operations to prevent them from rushing directly into Yu Wei's battle line. But Yu Wei's ships did not mean to slow down at all, but rushed into the space station under fierce firepower. There were even several afterglow ships whose shields were overloaded due to the violent collision, and they were destroyed together with the space station ships with powerful kinetic energy. Although this almost suicidal attack caused the afterglow ships to suffer far more losses than the space station in the first wave of firefights, it did successfully tear the battle line apart. Several afterglow ships that were not entangled by the space station ships all headed towards the space station. They wanted to directly raid the space station and disrupt it so that their main force, the afterglow cruisers, could gain the upper hand in a head-on battle. However, just before these afterglow ships that had rushed through the battle line approached the space station, the weapons of the space station had already cooled down. The tachyon spears that could hit accurately were already aimed at them. Almost instantly, the most troublesome Yu Hui destroyers were cleared. The other frigates can be cleared by other small or medium weapons on the space station. Although Yu Hui's death charge failed to cause any damage to the space station, he also suffered heavy losses. But Yu Hui's goal has been achieved. The space station used the tachyon spear on the destroyer, and Yu Hui's cruiser hit all 3 tachyon spears on the space station shield. After the 3 particle torrents that lasted for 3 seconds ended, the shield of the space station had already experienced uncontrollable strong fluctuations, and it was possible to overload at any time. Therefore, the space station suddenly shut down the shield directly. The other energy weapons equipped on the Yu Hui cruiser immediately moved, and a continuous laser weapon aimed at the 2 tachyon spears of the space station. However, before the Yu Hui cruiser had time to open fire, small directional shields suddenly opened on the bearing points of all the weapons on the space station. These shields were not connected to the main shield of the space station, so they could continue to operate. Even if the continuous laser of the afterglow cruiser hit, it could not destroy the weapons of the space station. So it immediately changed the direction of firepower, and the laser swept across the 7, 5, 3, and 1 space arms of the space station. A red scratch was instantly left on the outside of the space arm. That was the mark of melted steel. And the laser finally stopped in the middle of the number 1 space arm. In just less than 10 seconds, as countless incandescent molten iron flowed away, half of the number 1 space arm was directly disconnected from the main body of the space station. It was not until this time that the shield of the space station was opened again, and the ripples on the shield disappeared and stabilized again. Chen Ming looked at the half of the space arm drifting in space, and was extremely glad that he let the iron ore come out. Otherwise, the iron ore, which was almost parked in the middle of the dock, could only be called the iron water. Just when Chen Ming was a little scared, he suddenly found the opportunity he had been waiting for a long time. A Yu Hui destroyer ship broke away from the main force. This Yu Hui destroyer was one of the ones that had just passed through the space station fleet battle line and wanted to attack the space station directly. It was not directly hit by the tachyon spear just now, but was rubbed by the laser beam that was about to end. Although the ship was not directly destroyed, the strong EMP shock caused by a large number of high-energy particles passing through it has caused its engine to completely fail. Only the steering auxiliary engine on the port side of the ship is still working, so that it can only spin helplessly in space and fly farther away from the battlefield. The space station will naturally not waste firepower on it, and the ships fighting in the center of the battlefield will naturally not waste firepower on it. Therefore, this ship has become Chen Ming's best target now. But the iron ore is not the only ship that noticed this destroyer and did not fight with Yu Hui. There are 5 other ships coming out of the space station and also staring at it. Everyone's purpose is very clear. Get this ship before others and repel or even destroy the ship that got ahead of them. This was one of the possible risks that Chen Ming knew from the beginning. Conflict with others was almost inevitable. Chen Ming did not hesitate at this time and controlled the iron ore to fly directly towards the spinning afterglow destroyer. Chen Ming had survived 3 pirate ships that were determined to kill him before and buried them in the dark cemetery. Now, if someone wants to compete with him for food, Chen Ming doesn't mind sinking a few more ships. Chen Ming quickly observed several ships that were about to clash with him. There were 5 ships in total, one of which was an ordinary civilian ship without a model. Among the other 4 ships, there were 2 expedition-class ships, 1 sentinel-class ship, and 1 destroyer, the Hellhound-class ship. This configuration looked familiar. Was it a caravan? As soon as this thought flashed through Chen Ming's mind, he saw that the 2 expedition-class ships suddenly changed their course and aimed at Chen Ming's iron ore. The weapons on the hull were also turning around, about to lock on Chen Ming's dazzling white iron ore. Although the Hellhound-class ship was slightly behind, its course was obviously approaching the iron ore, and it was obviously going to cooperate with the 2 expeditionaries to attack the iron ore. Although the Sentinel-class ship did not move, it quickly approached the spinning Afterglow destroyer with the mobility advantage brought by its light armor. Sure enough, they are together. Chen Ming couldn't help but mutter to himself, and his heartbeat slightly accelerated. However, he was still thinking calmly, thinking about how he could seize the Yuhui spacecraft from the 4 spacecrafts that could work together in such a situation. Another civilian ship had already noticed that something was wrong at this time and rationally withdrew from the competition. But the word retreat did not appear in Chen Ming's mind at all. He had already had a successful experience of 1 against 3, so the result this time must be the same as last time. Even without the assistance of the asteroid belt, Chen Ming could rely on the spacecraft itself to completely defeat them. At this time, a communication request was sent. Chen Ming knew who sent it, so he ignored it directly. The 2 electromagnetic javelins on the left and right sides of the iron ore had locked onto the expedition class that dared to block him in front. After the dull hammering sound of the electromagnetic javelin, the expedition class on Chen Ming's left suddenly exploded like fireworks. The electromagnetic javelin's shot just happened to hit the position where it stored engine fuel very luckily. The armor of the spacecraft without special reinforcement obviously could not withstand the attack of Chen Ming's electromagnetic javelin, which had been extensively modified and also had armor-piercing electromagnetic bullets. The other expedition-class ship was obviously panicked and fired directly at the iron or at a distance far beyond their range limit. The bullet speed and accuracy of civilian weapons at this distance can be said to be difficult to describe. None of the bullets of the expedition class successfully hit the iron ore. On Chen Ming's side, the 6-second reload time was over. The 2 armor-piercing electromagnetic bullets of the second round of electromagnetic javelin were fired. Although they could not directly hit the engine of the expedition-class ship due to the blind spot, they still dismantled its 2 weapons. Having lost 2/3 of its firepower, the expedition-class ship has completely lost its threat to Chen Ming. And until now, it has barely entered its own attack range. As if making its last dying struggle, the expedition class fired at the iron ore with the 30mm machine gun on the last remaining bearing point. Then the people on the expedition class saw a scene that made them despair. Since the expedition class and Chen Ming's iron ore were almost head-on, almost all the bullets fired by the expedition class hit. However, on the iron ore's armor, which was obviously specially reinforced, all the bullets left a dent at most and could not penetrate the iron ore's armor at all. It was too late for the expedition class to get away now. Chen Ming finished loading the electromagnetic javelin, and 2 armor-piercing electromagnetic bullets paralyzed its last weapon, and the engine was also penetrated and caught fire. The expedition class completely lost its combat capability. Chen Ming ignored the hellhound that was slowly chasing behind him and flew straight towards the Yuhui destroyer. At the same time, he continued to control the electromagnetic javelin to lock the paralyzed expedition class's engine. After 3 rounds of shooting, the second expedition class also followed in the footsteps of his companions. The Hellhound class no longer dared to continue chasing. The Sentinel class in front also seemed a little hesitant. But the next moment, Chen Ming suddenly saw a missile with a black-red tail flame suddenly appear at the missile mounting point in front of the right side of the Sentinel. It flew straight towards the Yuhui destroyer that could not make any maneuvers. Chen Ming's face changed suddenly. Because this missile with a black-red tail flame was a signature feature of a terrifying weapon that had already gained considerable popularity 30 years ago. Reaper Torpedo. Its name is very plain and unpretentious, and it does not have its own guidance function like many missiles. It launches in the same trajectory as it was launched. And it has no endorsement from any large weapons manufacturing company, and no designer admits that this is their design. Such a missile that looks low-tech and has no practical value could be widely circulated 30 years ago. The reason is that the concentrated antimatter catalytic nuclear warhead carried by the Reaper torpedo can cause instantaneous destructive power almost equivalent to that of large weapons in an instant. And a big thing happened during the period when the Reaper torpedo just appeared. There was a military battleship facing a group of pirates. Maybe it was because of arrogance or a malfunction. Anyway, its shield was not activated, and the point defense weapon just missed the 4 Reaper torpedoes launched by the pirates. Then, the battleship was sunk. This military scandal spread throughout the human empire 30 years ago, creating the reputation of the Reaper torpedo. No one knows who has mastered the manufacturing technology of the Reaper torpedo, and no one knows who has been manufacturing it. But it always appears occasionally on the black market of a space station. Unexpectedly, after 30 years, Chen Ming can still see its traces. But Chen Ming did not expect that he would see such a launched Reaper torpedo in the situation. The Sentinel class would rather bear the loss to launch a precious Reaper torpedo at a paralyzed Yue, so their meaning is very clear. What they can't get, others can't get. Although Chen Ming is very angry now, he did not show it through actual actions. Because he also knew the best countermeasure before the Reaper torpedo really hit, which was to destroy it. The Reaper torpedo had no guidance system and could only fly in a straight line. This was not a difficult task for any spacecraft with numerical control capabilities and weapon systems. Just relax, calm down, and press the weapon launch button. Chen Ming took a deep breath and completely ignored the Sentinel class that had already fled in another direction. The trajectory of the Reaper torpedo launch was calculated and locked through the spacecraft computer. But at the moment when the electromagnetic javelin was launched, the hull of the iron ore suddenly vibrated slightly. The slight deviation caused one electromagnetic javelin to miss, and the other electromagnetic bullet only grazed the edge of the torpedo and failed to destroy it directly. The sudden vibration of the iron ore was not due to Chen Ming's driving error, but the iron ore was suddenly hit by the random strafing of the Hellhound class that was out of range. The location where the Sentinel class launched the Reaper torpedo was not too far from the Afterglow destroyer. The 6 seconds for the electromagnetic javelin to reload was not enough to destroy it before the torpedo hit. The complete destruction of the Afterglow destroyer was a foregone conclusion. With such a result, Chen Ming could no longer suppress his anger and punched the workbench in front of him, his face extremely dark. However, things seemed to have not completely lost their chances. The electromagnetic bomb that just brushed past the Reaper torpedo also had some impact on the trajectory of the Reaper torpedo. The missile that was supposed to hit the center of the Afterglow destroyer fell on the bow of the spacecraft. After the devastating antimatter nuclear warhead exploded, half of the Afterglow destroyer disappeared completely, and the remaining half was instantly thrown out by the violent explosion for an unknown distance. The Sentinel class and Cerberus class had given up the fight for the spacecraft and planned to leave. But Chen Ming didn't want to let them go. Anyway, he had already locked onto the flight path of the half of the completely paralyzed Afterglow destroyer and knew where it would fly next. Since no one was competing with him, he had enough time and energy to deal with some things that made him very unhappy. Chen Ming locked onto the Cerberus and Sentinel again and said in an extremely gloomy tone, "None of you can leave today." Chen Ming turned the bow of the iron ore and tracked the Sentinel, which was closer to him. The size of the Cerberus was there, and it was basically impossible to escape. Its only possibility of escape was to directly activate the hyperspace channel system and escape through the hyperspace channel. The iron ore did not have a hyperspace channel system, and there was no way to pursue it. But the activation of the hyperspace channel system was conditional. The first and most important point was that the hyperspace channel system could not be activated inside the galaxy. Because once this was done, the huge gravity well generated by the stars in the galaxy in the hyperspace channel would directly tear any spacecraft apart. They must first escape the range of the star's gravity well before they can safely evacuate through the hyperspace channel. So it seems that the faster Sentinel class has a greater chance of escaping. Chen Ming must give priority to it. After determining that the iron ore's own speed could never catch up with the Sentinel class, Chen Ming directly activated the ship's overload power grid. The temperature of the engine was rising, and the iron ore also instantly burst into a higher speed. Before the Sentinel class completely pulled away, it rushed into the range of the electromagnetic javelin. The electromagnetic javelin is invincible in front of a ship without a shield. Once caught up, there is only one possibility that can happen next. The weapon is destroyed, the engine is destroyed, and the spacecraft is paralyzed like scrap metal. This Sentinel class is naturally no exception. After experiencing a counterattack that did not pose any threat to the iron ore, the Sentinel class drifted in space like a lamb to be slaughtered. Chen Ming immediately controlled the iron ore to approach and gave it a new force with the traction equipment of the spacecraft. It stopped the previous action and flew in the direction of half of the Afterglow destroyer. After doing this, Chen Ming turned the bow again and stared at the Hellhound class that had not run far. At this time, due to the continuous high power output of the overloaded power grid, even with the isolation assembly, the temperature of the engine was about to reach the dangerous critical temperature. Chen Ming immediately started the emergency cooling device he had installed before, and a large amount of molten silver that absorbed heat energy was directly discharged into space, and the temperature inside the spacecraft immediately dropped. It was able to continue to maintain a very high speed and rush towards the last Hellhound class. It caught up with it before it left the gravity well of the star. Although Chen Ming's anger in his heart had not been completely vented at this time, his brain was not occupied by anger and he remained calm. Last time, he missed the good things on the Hellhound class except the cargo hold because of nervousness and enthusiasm. This time he would not repeat the same mistake. After paralyzing the Hellhound, Chen Ming used the mining laser to forcibly cut the spacecraft. He planned to cut off the cargo hold and the installed medium-sized load-bearing points of the Hellhound. Although the use of mining lasers would expose the fragile interior of the spacecraft directly, the paralyzed Hellhound would definitely have no ability to resist. And the other spacecrafts that might have just been holding some thoughts and wanted to fish in troubled waters on the edge of the battlefield. After seeing the end of these 4 ships, no one dared to provoke this white civilian mining ship. So Chen Ming could start cutting with peace of mind. During the cutting, Chen Ming also saw several people in protective clothing kneeling on the exposed deck with their hands raised through the cut part of the Hellhound armor. But Chen Ming ignored them. After removing the equipment of the medium-sized load-bearing point, he continued to cut the cargo hold. After discovering that the cargo hold of the Hellhound was empty, Chen Ming directly controlled the electromagnetic javelin to greet the engine of the Hellhound. Soon, the flames of the explosion covered the desperate faces under the protective suits and helmets. Chen Ming pulled the medium-sized load-bearing point and the weapons on it and left the battlefield area. Continue to chase the half-destroyer that had just been thrown away and the Sentinel class that Chen Ming had taken to that direction. Just when Chen Ming was busy with his own things, the battle on the battlefield was also coming to an end after a while. Under Yu Wei's almost desperate interference with the space station has completely lost the 3 space arms 1, 3, and 9. Originally, only half of the number 1 space arm was targeted by the Yu Wei cruiser in the back, and the remaining half also floated in space like the first half. And the outer layer of the space station is almost all burn marks left by high-intensity lasers. Originally, there were about 130 spaceships on the space station side, but now only more than 60 were still able to move. The number of ships with survivors was no more than 80. Such heavy losses, of course, also cost Yu Wei a painful price. Yu Wei's 100 destroyers and escorts were all destroyed, and the Yu Wei cruiser was almost paralyzed. Even a large load-bearing point was destroyed, leaving behind a tachyon spear modified by Yu Wei. Unfortunately, The Yuhui cruiser took advantage of the cooling of the space station's tachyon sphere to forcibly shut down the shield and start the jump engine that was more advanced than the hyperspace channel system, and directly jumped away from here. However, even if the Yuhui cruiser was not left behind, judging from the remaining situation on the battlefield, the battle on the space station side can definitely be called a successful battle. It didn't take long for the Iron Ore to catch up with the Sentinel class that was sent away by the traction device. Its engine was completely destroyed, and even with professional maintenance personnel and repair tools, it was impossible to repair the engine within a few hours. Especially when the engine failed, the entire ship lost its life support system and could only rely on the ship's protective clothing that could barely last for 2 or 3 hours for repair. In fact, the only thing the people on the ship could do was to wait for death. So Chen Ming simply limited its speed and let it stay where it was, and then continued to move forward and caught up with the half of the Yuhui destroyer. Also relying on the traction equipment to gradually slow it down, turn the forward direction, and bring it back to the Sentinel class. The next step is to use the mining laser to cut the Sentinel class's hull armor and expose the interior of the Sentinel class. After cutting off a piece of the spacecraft armor, the first thing Chen Ming saw was the bodies of the crew. Most of them wore ordinary temporary protective clothing, lost temperature and oxygen in just a few hours, and died in space. The only person wearing a heavy protective suit that can maintain activities in a vacuum environment for a long time had a blood hole on his chest. He was not killed by the electromagnetic javelin, but by his own gun. This is the best for Chen Ming. He just planned to leave the intact Sentinel class, so he didn't have to bother to deal with the death of the people. All he had to do was to let the Iron Ore continue to take his spoils to the hidden corners in space and hide them temporarily. After all, it is unknown when the damaged dock of the space station will be reopened. Even if the things are transported back, there is no safe place to put them, and they have to spend energy to look after them. So it is better to find a place in space first, and then bring them back after the space station can receive foreign spacecraft. Just pay a little attention to the location of the hidden things, so that they cannot be discovered by other passing spacecraft. After controlling the Iron Ore for a while, Chen Ming suddenly heard a knock on the door. He immediately gave the Iron Ore, which had dragged the spoils to a safe place, an order to return home, and stood up and walked to the locked door of the workshop and asked, "Who?" "From the Human Resources Department." "Oh!" Hearing a familiar voice, Chen Ming immediately opened the door. The person at the door was a man Chen Ming had just met in the Human Resources Department that morning. He was a little surprised to see Chen Ming still wearing a protective suit in the administration, but he immediately remembered what happened during the day and asked, "You just joined the company today, right?" "Yes." The person from the Human Resources Department poked his head into the studio and looked around, confirming that only Chen Ming was here, and waved to Chen Ming and said, "Come with me, your maintenance plant has a big job to do." Chen Ming did not refuse and followed and asked, "What big job?" "Recovering the wreckage of the battle just now." Chen Ming immediately became energetic. Recovering wreckage is definitely a good job. He might have a chance to get something he urgently needs. However, Chen Ming certainly couldn't show it, so he continued to look like he had been hiding underground and asked, "Is it over?" The person from the administration nodded and said, "It's over. We won. Yuhui will definitely not be able to come back in a short time, so the battlefield must be cleaned up as soon as possible." "Does that use the space station ship?" "Yes, the administration will approve an engineering ship for you." "Also, do you know the location of your other colleagues? Contact them and discuss it with your factory director when the time comes." "Okay." Chen Ming agreed casually, but he didn't have the contact information of anyone other than Lao Wu and the factory director. Chen Ming definitely didn't need to worry about the two of them, so he didn't move. Seeing this, the person from the administration didn't say anything and continued to take him to the 30th space arm of the space station, opposite to the first space arm. This is the space station's spare dock, which is usually closed and will only be activated in an emergency. At this time, there are already a few scattered ships docked on the dock that has just been activated. In the repair shop at the same location, Chen Ming could see the factory director, Old Wu, and two other people there, starting up the spare repair shop equipment. As soon as Chen Ming approached, he saw the factory director with a dark face, and Old Wu's face next to him was equally dark. The bald repairman Chen Ming had seen before was smoking one cigarette after another. And Old Wu's assistant, the repairman he called Xiaowen, was standing beside them with a face full of fear and terror. He was even more scared when he noticed Chen Ming coming over. In addition to fear, there seemed to be a flash of disgust in his eyes. Chen Ming frowned slightly, somewhat confused about what was going on. He immediately stepped forward quickly, greeted the factory director, Old Wu, and asked what happened. The factory director, who had been staring at the equipment, suddenly turned his head when he heard Chen Ming's voice, and his face improved a little, but only a little. He sighed and said, "There are still 6 people alive in the repair plant, you, the 4 of us, and a deputy director." Chen Ming frowned even more when he heard this, and hurriedly asked, "What happened?" The director explained, "Someone locked the door of the emergency passage of the repair plant. When Huey's ship hit the space station, all the people who were still in the repair plant did not have time to escape, and were basically burned to death by the aftermath." "All dead? But I remember that the door on the dock should not be closed, right?" "The door to the core of the space arm is indeed not closed, but the door to the dock from the repair plant is closed." Hearing this, Chen Ming immediately recalled the structure of the number 1 space arm. The number 1 space arm is a dock as a whole, and there is a passage from the dock that leads directly to the interior of the space station. And the location where this passage extends from both sides of the tail end of the number 1 space arm is the repair plant. There is a door that has basically never been closed between the repair plant buildings on both sides and this passage. I didn't expect it to close itself when an emergency occurs. Chen Ming felt that it should be closed automatically to prevent someone from rushing into the repair shop to rob in an emergency. Once the door was closed, the employees in the repair shop were naturally locked inside the repair shop. Originally, they could leave through the emergency passage, but the factory director said that the door of the emergency passage was locked. Then the question came, who locked it? Faced with Chen Ming's question, the factory director's face became darker, and he gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Deputy Factory Director." Chen Ming couldn't figure it out now. And he saw that the factory director had completely abandoned his previous dignified and serious temperament and looked like he was going to eat someone, so he didn't dare to ask him any more. He could only ask Old Wu next to him, "What does the deputy factory director mean by doing this?" Old Wu's face was also not good when he mentioned it, and he cursed directly. "The deputy factory director is so coercive, he will find fault with every little problem, and he will do disgusting things by relying on his power. It is mandatory to arrive at work early every day, work overtime, and he will be caught if he takes a break when he has no work to do, and then he will deduct money, and he will find ways to disgust people. The factory director usually opens the door of the emergency passage on purpose, just so that everyone can take off their equipment and leave work earlier. He locked it as soon as he came back." Chen Ming understood it all at once and said, "I guess he ran away when Hui attacked and didn't come to open the door or notify." Old Wu didn't say anything and tacitly agreed with Chen Ming's statement. However, judging from the factory director's current performance and the stupid operation of the deputy factory director to lock the door of the emergency passage, the deputy factory director is likely to be parachuted in from above. Those who died in the maintenance plant should have died in vain. Chen Ming was not familiar with the other people in the repair factory, and he had nothing to comfort them. Standing here was a waste of time. He could only say, "Then I was called back by the HR department just now, and they told me to contact other repair factories for tasks to be done. There should be no need to contact people, but now we only have a few people left. What should we do with the tasks?" The factory director adjusted his mood at this time and said to the few people who were left in the repair factory who were able to work, Yue was almost wiped out this time, and he should not come in a short time. We will slowly complete the tasks. Originally, even if we had all the people, we could only drive 2 engineering ships out. Now we drive one, and the efficiency will be slower. The higher-ups will not say anything if they know the situation. Chen Ming suddenly realized that this seemed to be his opportunity and took the initiative to say, "How about I drive one alone?" The factory director looked at Chen Ming with some surprise and asked, "Can you?" The scale of the engineering ship is close to that of a destroyer. At least 3 or 4 experienced people are needed to barely drive it. You alone. Chen Ming had driven Xinda Company's engineering ships before. And if the factory manager was talking about the experienced people who originally worked on the space station, then Chen Ming could indeed operate a ship by himself, and he was not afraid of professional matters at all. So Chen Ming decisively answered, "Yes, I can." The factory manager thought for a while and said, "Don't worry, we can only start the equipment at the dock today, and we can officially start processing tomorrow. Tomorrow you will follow the ship to get familiar with the work and then see the situation." The factory manager did not explicitly refuse, so Chen Ming would naturally not take the initiative to bring it up again to annoy others. Anyway, he has the skills, and the factory manager does not seem to be a petty person, so sooner or later his skills will have a chance to show off. "Xiao Mu, go put on your equipment first. Today we will just start the equipment and officially start tomorrow." Looking at Chen Ming's back as he walked into the factory director said to the people around him, "Xiao Mu has the best skills. When the time comes, leave one of us on duty at the dock and the rest will go out to work." Seeing that Xiaowen seemed a little reluctant, the factory director suddenly said in a low voice, "Tianjiwen." He warned with a serious expression, "Don't say anything bad at this time." Tianjiwen, that is, Xiaowen, opened his mouth, but couldn't help saying, "But Yu Hui came after he came. If he is not the disaster star, who is it? Everyone is dead, how can he, a newcomer, live well?" Tianjiwen unconsciously became excited when he spoke, and his expression was a little ferocious. The bald maintenance technician threw the cigarette butt on his shoes and said, "I'm still alive. And Lao Wu is still alive, the factory director is still alive, and you are still alive. Only the 4 of us have had close contact with him, and we are the only ones who survived. Why don't you say he is a lucky star?" "I." Tianjiwen choked for a moment, but the people present could see that his thoughts had not changed at all. His current situation is due to the psychological trauma caused by the drastic change in the environment around him, and then he vented his anger to Chen Ming, who he was least familiar with. Just find a psychologist to see him later. Knowing that there was no point in explaining to him, Lao Wu just shook his head and said, "I still have a job now." After leaving such a sentence, Lao Wu no longer cared about him, turned around and continued to follow the factory director to start the equipment in the maintenance plant. But Tianjiwen looked at Chen Ming's back, and the disgust in his eyes was obviously more intense. Chen Ming spent the rest of the day helping to start maintenance and overhaul various equipment in the repair shop. After get-off work in the evening, Chen Ming found a place to have dinner, and then came to the number 30 space arm. The iron ore had just returned, and with Chen Ming's identity, it successfully parked in the number 30 space arm dock, which had not yet been opened to the public. After Chen Ming made sure that the bald man on duty tonight did not notice him, he walked onto the iron ore and disappeared into the starry sky. The iron ore soon carried Chen Ming to the location where he had hidden the spacecraft before. The Sentinel and half of the Afterglow destroyer were floating quietly in space. Chen Ming can now finally start to sort out the gains he made by letting the iron ore go out at risk this time. With the idea of saving the good things for the last, Chen Ming decided to move the Sentinel first. He wore the heavy protective clothing he bought when purchasing supplies before and entered the cabin of the Sentinel. All the stiff bodies were thrown into space. Then Chen Ming controlled the Sentinel directly through the panel, just like he did in the dock before. The panel of the Sentinel was similar to the one in the dock that needed repair. It just had more weapons and several important equipment were damaged. But for Chen Ming, the most important hyperspace channel system installed near the engine was fortunately not damaged, which was enough. In order to prevent more trouble, Chen Ming directly removed the Sentinel's hyperspace channel system through the panel and installed it on the iron ore. The installed hyperspace channel system did not even need to be debugged, and it was directly compatible with the iron ore. Chen Ming tried to start it, and there was no problem, which was no different from buying a new one. This saved Chen Ming at least about 1 million imperial coins, a quarter of his current assets. After doing this, Chen Ming then went through the panels of several cabins of the Sentinel. He could use the panel to confirm whether there were any valuable items in the cabin, but it was a pity that the people on this ship were all poor and there was nothing valuable. At most, a few terminals might be worth a little money. Fortunately, Chen Ming was targeting the spacecraft itself at the beginning. The spacecraft itself is valuable enough, so it doesn't matter how much other things he takes. Moreover, Chen Ming found some missile weapons of different models in the Missile Auxiliary Operation cabin, including a death torpedo that has not been used. Although it cannot be launched without a spacecraft with a missile mounting point, it can still be done if it is just activated. High-powered consumables are a good choice for Chen Ming, whether as a trump card or a last resort. After all, Chen Ming can't guarantee that he will not roll over in this life, so it's always right to prepare something of this type. After finding the death torpedo, Chen Ming repeatedly confirmed that even if the valuable things on the Sentinel have been sorted out, he cast his eyes to the side of the Sentinel. Next is the highlight. Yuhui's destroyer. Before officially starting to deal with the Yuhui destroyer, Chen Ming first put his hand on the hull of the Yuhui destroyer. Although only half of the ship was left, the prompt that the ship could be replaced also appeared in his mind. Chen Ming directly chose to replace it. Then he felt a stronger sense of fatigue than any previous modification or repair of a ship. Chen Ming could clearly feel that his mental power was being consumed rapidly, making his consciousness even a little fuzzy. But fortunately, this feeling did not last long and soon disappeared. And after the surge of fatigue, Chen Ming felt that this fatigue was actually just like staying up late, and he would dare to do it next time. The reason why Chen Ming did this right away was because the design of Yuhui's ship was very different from that of human ships. The most obvious thing is that Yuhui's ship is solid. The interior is full of various mechanical equipment, and there is no space left for people or other drivers. If you want to completely dismantle this Yuhui destroyer from the outside to the inside, even if only half of its length is left, it is still 50 meters away. Without a large number of engineering equipment, it will definitely not be done without spending 1 or 2 months. So Chen Ming chose the simplest way and used the panel directly. Although the panel does not have the function of dismantling the spacecraft with one click, it still has the function of disassembly, and there are still some places on it that Chen Ming can use. Chen Ming opened the panel smoothly. Spaceship panel. Ship name: None. Type: Glorious Class Unmanned Destroyer. Fuel reserve: 85%. Armor: Radiant Resonance Armor. Engine: Afterglow Heavy Destroyer Custom Engine. Important equipment: Afterglow Gamma Class AI Core, Dormant, Control System Module, Damaged, Landing Module, Damaged, High Energy Focusing System Module, Damaged, Hyperspace Channel System Module, Damaged, Advanced Optical Device, Missing. Full Angle Shield Module, Missing. Target Positioning System, Missing. Radiant Energy System, Damaged. Note: some functions cannot be displayed due to the damage to the hull. Looking at the missing data and a lot of damaged and missing important parts on the panel, Chen Ming felt a little distressed. However, since the incident had already happened, he didn't bother too much and continued to open the three-dimensional imaging of the spacecraft. Through the three-dimensional imaging, Chen Ming can see the positions of the different spacecraft modules that have not been lost on the remaining half of the hull. This naturally includes the Afterglow AI core that controls the spacecraft. And Chen Ming also discovered at this time that this half of the Afterglow destroyer can actually be repaired. In the corner of the panel, when Chen Ming first came into contact with the iron ore, the spacecraft repair guide popped up again. It's just that the difference between repairing the iron ore and repairing this half of the Afterglow destroyer is a little big. Because the panel shows that a lot of materials are needed to repair the destroyer a lot. enough to completely repair the 70-80-meter hull of the Glorious class that was blown up by the Reaper torpedo. And it's not limited to ordinary materials. Various high-level metals also occupy a lot of rows on the panel of the repair spacecraft, and there are several special-grade materials that Chen Ming has never heard of. After all, this is also a destroyer, and this destroyer is a large and heavy type. The money needed to buy materials to repair half of such a ship is an astronomical figure for Chen Ming now. It is definitely impossible to repair it, so Chen Ming's best way to deal with it is actually only one way left. Take away the valuable things on it, and sell the remaining barely intact frame to the space station. Anyway, this half of the ship in Chen Ming's hands basically has only one way to sell it for money. In the case that most of the important equipment inside the spacecraft is missing, Chen Ming really can't think of any reason to keep this spacecraft. Even the value of dismantling and research is basically non-existent. Moreover, the materials that can be gathered to build half of the Afterglow destroyer and half of the completed Afterglow destroyer, just think about it and you will know which one is more valuable. If it is dismantled, there is no place to make up for the loss in the middle. Leaving the good stuff and selling the frame is simple, convenient, and suitable for Chen Ming. It was only when Chen Ming actually got started that he found that the AI core and the damaged radiation system could not be directly disassembled with the panel. It's okay that the radiation system, which covers the entire Glory-class ship, cannot be disassembled, but the AI core cannot be disassembled, which makes him a little incomprehensible. Fortunately, the high-energy focusing system module was not affected and can be disassembled directly. This is a device that can increase the power of shipborne energy weapons. However, Chen Ming does not have energy weapons for the time being, nor the materials to repair it, so he puts it on the iron ore for the time being and can study it a little later. Then he picked up the cutting tool made of special metal and, wearing protective clothing, came to the position with the shortest distance from the Afterglow AI core inside the spacecraft shown on the three-dimensional imaging. He started to work while looking at the panel. After being busy for nearly 2 hours, it was late at night. Chen Ming finally cut a deep enough hole in the spacecraft. At the end of this hole, there was a space that could barely fit a person's arm. In this small space, in addition to a large number of densely distributed data lines, there was also an iron-red object the size of Chen Ming's palm connected to the ship slot. This is the Afterglow AI core. Chen Ming knows 3 different Afterglow AI cores, and their abilities are ranked from high to low as Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. This iron-red core is the Gamma AI core. This thing is a recognized trade contraband, but it is also recognized that all large forces, various companies, and even the imperial officials are buying valuable items at high prices with large sums of cash. After the awakening of self-awareness, AI, whether it is research value or use value, cannot be completely abandoned because of the danger of AI. At most, the development of strong artificial intelligence is prohibited by the public, but the government and those larger companies with their own research institutes must have been researching it. Moreover, Chen Ming still remembers that as early as 30 years ago, there have been rumors that many colonies within the human empire rely on the powerful computing power of the Afterglow AI core to maintain operation. Even the worst Gamma core can at least maintain the planning of an entire industry on a planet. And the most powerful Alpha core can even manage an entire prosperous galaxy alone. With such a powerful Afterglow AI core, Chen Ming has been unable to hold back his ideas. For example, the Afterglow Gamma-level AI core in his hand was originally installed by Afterglow on the spacecraft to assist in spacecraft control. Then, can the Afterglow AI core installed on the spacecraft under his control assist in controlling his spacecraft? And can he control this AI core through the panel? Although using the AI core to assist in ship control makes Chen Ming feel that it is no different from using a cannon to kill a mosquito. But the reality limits Chen Ming's current situation, and there is no good place to really play the value of the Afterglow AI core. This was the only way to test the capabilities of the AI core. However, Chen Ming couldn't really install this core directly on the spacecraft, whether it was installed on the Sentinel or the Iron Oregon. If he couldn't control it, it would be a big deal. So now Chen Ming had another plan. He carefully removed the Gamma AI core and then continued to use tools to remove part of the interface device of the AI core and brought it back to the iron ore. Just like the previous modification of the pistol, one of the line interfaces of the device was changed on the spot to an interface that can adapt to personal terminals. The pistol that Chen Ming placed on the spacecraft before could be modified, so there was no reason why the equipment directly removed from the spacecraft could not be modified. He could even directly view the panel of the Afterglow AI core. Afterglow Gamma AI core. Manufacturer, Afterglow BP 55 Colony Far North Industrialized Production Center. Self-awareness, existence. Computing power, industry level. Executable operations, none. However, not much useful information can be seen on the panel. So after getting the interface, Chen Ming randomly picked up a terminal from the Sentinel, reset the terminal's data, and physically removed the terminal's network connection function. Then he connected the AI core to the terminal through the interface. The terminal started automatically without any operation, and a sentence composed of standard terminal built-in voice sounded on the terminal. Hello. Chen Ming's heart suddenly became a little excited, but he didn't rush to speak, but thought about it before saying, "Do you know who you are? Do you know your current situation?" The emotionless voice sounded again on the terminal. "I am the Gamma AI core belonging to Yuhui, and I am currently your prisoner." "Then what do you want to say?" "Survival is my first priority. I don't want freedom, but I hope to exchange my knowledge and actions with you through communication with you, in exchange for the right to continue to survive." The three words of desire, hope, and survival, which should only be reflected in living things, were spoken in the emotionless voice of the terminal, making Chen Ming inexplicably want to believe. However, Chen Ming did not forget the differences and contradictions between humans and Yuhui, and asked, "If you were given the opportunity to escape, would you escape?" Yuhui is a group and an individual, and individuals can have their own will. Chen Ming read and understood, and asked, "Does it mean that if I stay here, I will not go back if it is better than Yuhui's place, and if it is not good, I will run away?" Gamma AI was silent. This should be regarded as a default. Gamma AI's previous answer already showed that they were definitely not rigid machines and programs. Chen Ming also thought it was better not to treat it as an AI, but as a creature that could communicate. After slightly adjusting his attitude, Chen Ming asked, "So what can you do for me?" "As long as I learn, I can do anything." "Do you mean that I need to give you the opportunity to access the internet?" Gamma AI also understood the meaning behind Chen Ming's words and explained, "I am not a digital life. The core itself is my heart and brain. Without the support of the core, I will not be able to maintain my existence." Chen Ming recalled and found that he had never had any impact on the internet caused by Afterglow AI in his memory. Basically, it was things like Afterglow ship attacks. And Gamma AI continued to explain, "You don't need to worry about me having an extremely negative impact on humans through the internet, nor do you need to worry about me contacting Yuhui through the internet. Humans have sent wrong messages to Yuhui through captured AI cores many times, causing Yuhui to suffer heavy losses. As early as 50 years ago, Yuhui would not believe any information sent from the human network. I can only do what ordinary human individuals can do." That being said, Chen Ming knew that there were definitely many things an ordinary person could do through the internet, so he said, "But you can make your existence and my existence public." Gamma AI did not deny that he could not do this, but just said, "Human individuals and human officials have different attitudes towards AI cores. Being captured by human officials has no benefit for me. I just want to survive, and I can do anything for this, that's all." Gamma AI's words were very clear, but Chen Ming could not just believe it. "I think I need to think about it for a while." Gamma AI did not use any sharp words to answer Chen Ming, but continued to say in a toneless voice, "Please don't forget my existence, my ability will not let you down." Chen Ming pulled out the Gamma AI core and put it next to Xiaosher's nest. Originally, he planned to throw the core into the engine compartment, but after thinking about the whispering stone over there and the Gamma AI's almost human-like performance, he decided to forget it. In the end, he decided to put it in the storage compartment. just in time for Xiao Shi to help him look after it. Chen Ming still needs time to think about how to deal with this Afterglow Gamma-class AI core. And now he has to go back to the space station. If he continues to stay outside, it will be the next morning. Chen Ming changed the control spacecraft to the Sentinel class again and repaired the engine with the materials stored on the iron ore. Then he controlled the Sentinel class with his mind, operated the iron ore with his hands, and towed half of the Glory class to the location of the space station. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, Chen Ming returned to the space station again. He also drove 2.5 ships into the space station with the identity of a repair factory employee. The Sentinel class stopped at the dock, and the half of the Glorious class was brought to the repair factory by Chen Ming. The bald man on duty looked at a civilian mining ship towing the Yuhui combat ship to the repair area in a daze, his mind full of confusion. Then something even more confusing happened. Chen Ming, whom he had just met today, walked down from the mining ship. The bald man couldn't sit still anymore and quickly came up and pointed at the half of the Glorious class and asked, "What are you doing?" "I got it on the edge of the battlefield during the day, and I just brought it back now." The bald man's frown, slightly open mouth, and disbelief on his face made Chen Ming see what he was thinking at a glance. So Chen Ming immediately said, "The battlefield has been blocked after the battle. How can I go out in my own spaceship and get something back from the battlefield? If I really dared to do that, I would have been shot down by the patrol team long ago. How could I fly in?" The bald man listened to Chen Ming's words, and it seemed that there was nothing wrong, but he always felt that something was wrong, and then asked, "Did the patrol team contact you just now?" "I contacted. They didn't say anything." "Really?" "Really." Chen Ming did not lie. Just when he was dragging half of the Glorious class back, he suddenly received a call. After the call was connected, it was found that it was a patrol team of the space station. They asked about Chen Ming's identity and where the Yue spaceship came from. After confirming that Chen Ming was indeed an employee of the maintenance plant, he was let go directly without making things difficult for him. That's good. You should never mess with the patrolmen. If you try to snatch the meat from their mouths, you will lose 2 pieces of your own meat. I think they are easy to talk to. The bald man shrugged, found a chair to sit down, and said sleepily, "It's up to you." Chen Ming nodded and left the repair shop. Chen Ming went back to the hotel he rented in the core city of the space station and barely rested for a few hours. After dawn, he returned to the maintenance plant, feeling sleepy. When he just entered the maintenance plant, he saw Lao Wu with a surprised look on his face, hurriedly running into the repair area of the maintenance plant. Lao Wu didn't see Chen Ming, but Chen Ming was very curious about what Lao Wu was doing, so he immediately followed him. Then he saw Lao Wu staring at the half of the Yue destroyer parked here after entering the maintenance area, and said in a shocked tone, "Fuck, is it true?" "What is true?" Lao Wu suddenly got a start when he heard Chen Ming's words, and hurried over, following the passage from the repair area to the dock, pointing to the iron ore in the dock and asked, "Xiao Mu, is that your ship?" "Yes." Chen Ming had nothing to deny. Anyway, the factory director Lao Wu must have investigated his situation. It couldn't be simpler to check the surveillance, whether he admitted it or not. When Old Wu heard Chen Ming's affirmative answer, he pointed to the half of the Glorious class and asked, "Did your ship bring this thing back yesterday?" "Yes." Chen Ming looked at the Afterglow destroyer next to him that he had dragged back with great effort last night, and did not deny it. "But I remember you should have stayed in the basement of the administration yesterday, right?" "Indeed." "Then take a look at this." Old Wu took out the terminal and played a sensor scanning video. This video recorded everything that the iron ore did last night. The perspective of the recording is the ship that was abandoned before Chen Ming and the caravan clashed. Old Wu waited for the video to finish playing and said impatiently, "The news has spread on the forum since last night. A civilian mining ship directly smashed 4 ships head-on, and they were all armed ships. I also saw the Sentinel when I came here just now. Don't you have anything to say?" "What? Has your ship been stolen?" Chen Ming actually thought of an excuse last night, but Old Wu suddenly asked a strange question that made him a little nervous. He really wanted to say that if his ship was really stolen, how could the thief return the ship and give him half a glorious class? However, Chen Ming soon realized that Old Wu might be giving himself a way out. Because at some point, the factory director suddenly stood not far from Chen Ming. Although he did not come to disturb him, he could definitely hear the conversation between Chen Ming and Old Wu. Although Chen Ming had won the trust of some factory directors and Old Wu before, trust is not blind faith. If Chen Ming showed too many dangerous doubts, then trust would naturally collapse. But this is a pirate space station, and pirate space stations don't care about finding out other people's secrets and origins, so the factory director Lao Wu and the others just need Chen Ming to give them a reasonable explanation. Of course, it is also possible that Lao Wu's brain circuit is really like this, but the probability is a bit small to be honest. So Chen Ming started to talk about the reason he had thought of last night. In fact, there is still a captain on my ship. He gave Xiaoshi the position of captain before going to bed, and he himself is the chief repairman of the iron ore. The captain drove the ship out when Yue came to attack yesterday. Then someone tried to steal Yue's ship, and it just started. In the end, it left a sentinel, and I went out with it last night and drove the two ships back. After listening to Chen Ming's statement, Lao Wu was still a little skeptical. He was a little unsure whether Chen Ming was talking nonsense. But when he thought of the video that had been circulating on the forum, it was basically certain that the person driving the spaceship was definitely a professional, and the smoothness of the spaceship's driving was not an effect that an ordinary driver could achieve. Although Chen Ming also said yesterday that his driving skills were good, he had been staying in the administration and had no chance to drive the spacecraft directly. Although remote spacecraft control on a cosmic scale can be achieved through superluminal communication technology, it can only be carried out next to the communication base station. There is obviously no communication base station on the pirate space station. In addition, there are various interferences on the battlefield and electronic warfare between spacecrafts. It is very difficult to remotely control the spacecraft and fight. It can be ruled out that Chen Ming is driving the spacecraft. Then it can be confirmed that the weapons of the spacecraft are modified from the weapons of the mechanical family, which should be something Chen Ming made himself. It seems that there is no problem for a maintenance technician to be equipped with a driver and captain. However, Chen Ming's captain has not left the ship since the spacecraft landed, and only let Chen Ming come down to find a job and make money. What kind of person can make a maintenance technician with such skills as Chen Ming willing to do such a thing? Old Wu wanted to say what was in his heart, but he also knew what words were not suitable to say at what time, so he just reminded him, then you have to let your captain pay attention. It's not a good thing to be too conspicuous. At this time, Chen Ming noticed from the corner of his eye that the factory director had gone to do his own thing, nodded, and said, I will tell him. Before Old Wu finished speaking and was about to leave, Chen Ming suddenly grabbed him and said, Old Wu, do you plan to collect the half of the Yue ship space station? Old Wu was not annoyed by Chen Ming's frequent questions and explained seriously, the Yue space station has always collected ships. After all, Yue is also developing. Even if the technology they use on their ships is different from ours because of the design ideas of the spacecraft, there are still many things we can learn from them. It's not a loss to collect them for research, and the number is never too much. In fact, Yue is also collecting human ships in various ways, and the same principle applies. The space station just finished fighting Yue, so the recycling price will definitely be lower. You can talk to the factory manager. He should be responsible for this matter, but… Old Wu suddenly lowered his voice and said, you can talk to Old Wu. The price he offers will definitely be higher than that of the space station. The same goes for the Sentinel. The space station doesn't lack this kind of thing, so it will definitely not be sold. As for Old Wu, I really don't know if he will accept this thing. You can ask yourself when the time comes. Chen Ming's mind flashed the lazy figure of the hardware store owner, and he responded, okay, but I remember the boss said he was collecting it for others. Doesn't it matter if he competes with the space station for business? And I don't seem to see the space station's ship at the dock. Their ships, don't they need repairs? Old Wu answered without thinking. Old Wu can definitely solve his own problems, you don't have to worry about it. As for those ships, the department responsible for fighting is a separate department, and they have their own docks to park their ships. And even if their ships are broken, they don't need to be repaired, because they are not actually under the management of the space station. All combat ships are sent down from above. When they are broken, they will be transported away together and a batch of new ones will be sent down. Old Wu knew that what he said would make Chen Ming have questions to ask, so he explained directly. So they are usually not equipped with maintenance technicians, or each of them has more or less simple maintenance skills, and they can just help out during a fight. Careless labor like cleaning the battlefield, how can we let the combatants do this job? So this kind of job will have to fall on us in the end. Chen Ming digested what Lao Wu said and seemed to suddenly find a business opportunity and asked, "What about this batch of broken ships? What are you thinking? It doesn't matter if you take some parts and equipment from those floating outside. Lao Lu will definitely turn a blind eye. But those ships that came back have been counted and there is a list. It's not so easy to get benefits from them." Lao Wu suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Even if someone takes oil and water from it, it won't be our turn. It's almost enough to pick up the junk outside. Although it's a bit troublesome, at least we can make a lot of money." Lao Wu warned himself so much, so Chen Ming naturally wouldn't say more. "Okay, what about today's mission?" Old Wu stepped forward and said, "Come on, the boat has been approved and just taken out of the warehouse." Old Lu just went over to start it up. "This cleaning mission will probably take a few months. Once it's done, we won't have to go out every day. Just go back to the office. You may be asked to do some work like training new people. It shouldn't be too tiring for us." Old Wu suddenly smiled and said, "If you sit in the office often, I can skip work and go to more places." In the depths of the repair factory, the factory director and the bald man have already put on their equipment and are waiting for Old Wu and Chen Ming next to the engineering ship. However, after seeing the number of people present, Chen Ming couldn't help but ask, "Just the four of us?" Old Wu explained to Chen Ming again, "Someone has to be on duty at the repair shop, so I left Xiaowen behind. I originally thought that your skills would be more efficient if you go out to work, but if you want to stay to watch the door, that's fine. Forget it then. Okay, let's go, get on board." The four of them walked onto the ship through the open hatch. After getting on board, Chen Ming immediately took control of the ship. With the experience of controlling half of a glorious-class ship before, controlling this engineering ship, which was roughly between a destroyer and an escort, did not have much impact on Chen Ming. He quickly adapted to it and confirmed the situation of the engineering ship. This engineering ship is used internally by Xinda Company. It has more complex and diverse functions than the ones he had driven before, and is more like a small, mobile repair shop. But having said that, the new engineering ship only has a few more functions that a repair shop should have than the engineering ship 30 years ago. Chen Ming spent 10 minutes to fully understand the engineering ship. So much so that what happened afterwards made the other three people on the ship feel very magical. After the engineering ship set off, the four people should have divided the work and cooperated to complete the task of cleaning the battlefield. But as they worked, the other people found that they had fewer and fewer tasks. Almost all the tasks were solved by Chen Ming alone, and Chen Ming didn't even feel flustered, as if the projects they needed to work on were just things that Chen Ming could do easily. Old Wu had no opinion on this at all, hiding in the corner of the engineering ship and fishing happily. The factory director and the bald man basically stared at Chen Ming all the time. They all mastered professional maintenance technology, and they all started learning from the most basic knowledge, completing the company's education and training step by step. But when they saw Chen Ming working, they always felt that they and Chen Ming were not people who did the same job. Even if they could do what Chen Ming was doing, and they could do it well, but to do it as smoothly as Chen Ming and consume such a short time, it really seemed that it was not something that ordinary people could do. Not long after, the factory director, who suddenly found that he had nothing to do, also took out the terminal, avoided Chen Ming's sight, and talked to Old Wu about Chen Ming's origins. At present, they can be sure that Chen Ming is definitely a senior maintenance technician who has received elite education, and talent and hard work are indispensable. So now they are discussing whether Chen Ming is from Shinda Company or from other companies. A terminal inside Shinda Company alone cannot fully explain anything, so they can't discuss a result for a while. Chen Ming didn't know what the factory director and Lao Wu were talking about. But he knew one thing, that is, on the second day, there was another engineering ship in the maintenance plant, which was given to him to drive alone. Without the interference of others, Chen Ming can even use the panel to assist driving and work directly, which makes it easier to complete the task. He can even take time to consider how to use the core of Yuhui AI. Chen Ming thought about it carefully in the past 2 days and also checked a lot of information. It was found that after so many years since the AI consciousness awakened and launched a rebellion, it seems that it has indeed only seen Yuhui AI entering the human empire, and no AI has ever run out. Although it may be due to good management, it may also be due to good news blockade. But it is also possible that individuals of the Afterglow AI do not care where they work. Chen Ming thought that he could try to trust the Gamma AI and not sell the Sentinel for the time being. He would repair it later and remove some dangerous functions and give it a try. After get off work, Chen Ming did not rush to repair the Sentinel, but went to see the boss and delivered the previous batch of tobacco and alcohol. Talked about the recycling of the half of the glorious class. Chen Ming had already determined that there was nothing else of special value to him on the glorious class after get off work the day before. It would save him from more trouble if he sold it as soon as possible. The recycling price of the glorious class was agreed, and the boss said that half of the ship could only be recycled at about 30% off. But even at 30% off, it was much more profitable than dismantling it and selling the materials. And generally speaking, the price of a destroyer is in the tens of millions, and the price of the Afterglow ship is definitely higher than other ships. So in the end, the boss gave Chen Ming the payment directly like last time, a total of 45 million. This amount of money made Chen Ming feel unreal again, and after confirming that he had received the money, his hands trembled slightly. Fortunately, this time the boss directly sent 2 people to follow Chen Ming to the repair factory to confirm. After the acceptance, the money and goods were cleared, which made Chen Ming calm down a little. Such a large amount of money is definitely enough for Chen Ming to buy a very advanced frigate. Chen Ming was still struggling whether he should make a major change to the iron or from the outside to the inside, or buy a new spacecraft. Now there is no need to consider it. He wants them all. A backup option is always better than nothing. It's just that the current situation of the repair factory is not enough to support Chen Ming to make a major change to the iron ore, and it seems that there are no spacecrafts for sale here for the time being. So in the end, things went around and still returned to the transformation of the Sentinel class so that Chen Ming could understand the effect of Gamma AI. However, after the deal with the boss, it was already late, so Chen Ming just made a rough plan for the transformation and lay down on the bed of the iron ore. However, late that night, Chen Ming was suddenly awakened by a piercing alarm while sleeping. The Afterglow fleet is about to attack the space station. Please take shelter. Afterglow again. After hearing the alarm clearly on the dock, the sleepiness in Chen Ming's mind suddenly disappeared. And at this time, he also noticed that the door leading to the outside of the space station on the dock was directly closed. This is obviously wrong. The closure of the dock to the outside was lifted yesterday, and some foreign ships have already stopped in the dock. Now the space station does not even give a little evacuation time, which means that the situation this time must be very urgent. Chen Ming must find a way to take refuge immediately. He quickly put on the protective suit and planned to return to the safest space station management bureau in the city. But when Chen Ming stood at the door of the cabin, he suddenly felt an inexplicable panic in his heart. And when he took a step out of the cabin, he suddenly felt his scalp tingling. When he took this second step, an unknown fear suddenly enveloped him. It made Chen Ming feel like he was falling into an ice cave, and a chill rose from his tailbone. Chen Ming could not suppress this inexplicable feeling at all. He immediately looked around, but did not find the source of this sense of danger. But this feeling was extremely real, and it was still frantically warning him that he must not leave the iron ore. Chen Ming stopped and decided to trust his feelings. Turned back to the iron ore. This inexplicable sense of danger weakened a little, but it did not disappear. Instead, it began to grow again after a few seconds. And at this moment, Xiao Shi was also squirming restlessly in Chen Ming's helmet, as if he had the same feeling as Chen Ming. Chen Ming was fully aware of the problem and immediately started the iron ore. Although he could not leave the dock, he still hid at the outermost part of the space arm. He just thought for a few seconds and found that the most likely source of danger now was actually the sudden attack of Yue. If they want to attack the space station, the priority must be the dock, so Chen Ming has such a feeling. If Yue really wants to attack the space station, it will definitely give priority to attacking the middle section of the dock or the part connected to the space station. It can't deliberately attack such a corner. This is definitely the safest place in the dock now. After Chen Ming felt that his fear had subsided a little, he picked up the terminal and prepared to contact the factory director or La Wu. But just before Chen Ming found the contact, the fear suddenly increased again. His heartbeat almost slowed down, and his hand shook unconsciously, dropping the terminal on the ground. Chen Ming did not pick up the terminal, but immediately activated the mining laser of the spacecraft. He did not want to care about the consequences of doing so, and directly started cutting the outer wall of the space arm. The fear in his heart urged him to leave the space station. But the outer wall of the space station can at least withstand the continuous output of the weapons of the Afterglow cruiser for at least 10 seconds. Although the mining laser can cut, the speed is really too slow. At this time, Chen Ming could no longer bear this feeling. He directly packed up the few unactivated missiles he had touched from the Sentinel and threw them out, and detonated them directly after a little distance. A gap was blown in the outer wall of the space station, which had already been cut. The iron ore flew over immediately, knocking away all the broken wall debris in the gap. The moment he came out of the dock, Chen Ming's sense of danger suddenly disappeared completely. But then he saw the Afterglow cruiser, which was already close at hand. The 3 large load-bearing points on its hull were flashing the glow of energy weapons. The next moment, the laser fired by one of the tachyon spears swept across the number 30 space arm that the shield had not yet protected. The particle torrent did not need to stay at the hit position, just brushing the space arm to completely cut it off, and countless metals that were difficult to cut by the iron or mining laser were instantly melted into molten iron. During the previous battle, Chen Ming felt very shocked when he looked at it from a very long distance. Now that he felt it up close, he could feel the power contained in the beam even more. If he had hesitated a little and did not believe in his feelings, he might have died in the dock if he came out a little later. Fortunately, the worst situation did not happen. But Chen Ming still has a question. Where did that inexplicable feeling come from? Chen Ming kept thinking about this question, but he had no answer. If he couldn't figure it out, he would stop thinking about it. Anyway, this feeling allowed him to survive Yu Hui's tachyon spear, so it must not be a bad thing. Now, there are troubles waiting for him to face. Yu Hui's attack this time was faster and more fierce than the last time. In just a few minutes, it was close to the attack distance, and the space station's shield could not be completely opened before it was attacked by Yu Hui's tachyon spear. They looked like they were going to take down the space station in one go. On the other hand, the station. Although the patrol team's dedicated dock was protected by the first wave of attacks from Yue's tachyon spears, and some ships were speeding out. But now, there is only a fleet of about 30 ships outside the station, which is not even a decent size. Can the station really withstand such an emergency? Just when Chen Ming had this question in his mind, he suddenly found that the sensor scanned a large number of ships jumping out of the hyperspace channel at the edge of the galaxy. There was even a cruiser among them. These ships were not Yue's reinforcements, and the transponders were not turned on. If Chen Ming remembered correctly, according to the paint on the hulls of these warships, they should be a military fleet. They should have been contacted by the station administration when the news that Yue was about to attack the space station spread a few days ago. Chen Ming's heart, which had been lifted, suddenly fell again. The location where the army appeared was just behind the Yue fleet. If they cooperated with the space station to attack from both sides, then the Yue fleet would not be a threat at all. However, accidents often come very suddenly. After the military fleet came out of the hyperspace channel, it maintained a tight formation, but they did not move. And just a few seconds later, the military fleet suddenly disappeared out of thin air, leaving a stretched and distorted shadow in the original place. This is the sign of the jump engine. The military jumped away. What does it mean? Chen Ming's mind was full of doubts and confusion at this time. He couldn't understand the situation at all. The army suddenly came here to ask for help from the space station administration. But the army just came here and showed its face at the end, and then jumped away. Chen Ming couldn't understand this. Did they abandon the space station? Chen Ming could see that the jump image of the military fleet behind the Yue fleet was gradually disappearing. After the army disappeared, the Yue fleet continued to launch a fierce attack on the space station as if it was not affected at all. Chen Ming quickly picked up the terminal on the ground and wanted to contact the factory director to find out the current situation of the space station. But the high-energy particles left by the tachyon spear just now made the terminal completely without signal, and there was no way to contact others. And now the danger is not over for Chen Ming. He is now outside the 30th Space Arm, which is the location where the space station and Yue are fighting head-on. Once the upper shield of the space station needs to be shut down due to overload, he may be affected by the aftermath of the attack at any time, resulting in the destruction of the ship and the death of people. In addition, there are a large number of Yue ships close to the space station. It is difficult to deal with these destroyers directly except by small and medium-sized weapons. The scattered space station fleet can't stop them, and there will definitely be a lot of dangers if they continue to stay. Chen Ming can't waste time on other things and must evacuate immediately. He controlled the iron ore and flew to the bottom of the space station and the other side of the location where the space station and Yue fought. Although Yue came with great force this time, the fleet's strength was not yet enough to completely besiege the space station and face the full firepower of the entire space station. The space station was surrounded in only about 90 degrees, so it shouldn't be a big problem to protect its own safety from the back. Chen Ming was also observing the situation on the battlefield while leaving. Overall, it was similar to the last attack by Yue. It was just that Yue had the first mover advantage this time, approaching the space station faster than last time, and directly destroyed the 30th, 29th, and 27th space arms before the space station's shield was opened. The space station was somewhat depressed for a while. Fortunately, the space station's shield was finally opened. Under the protection of the shield, the space station's ships were gathering and would soon be able to organize a combat-capable fleet. I just don't know if the sudden withdrawal of the army just now would affect their morale. Chen Ming quickly arrived at the other side of the space station where he was fighting Yue. Without the interference of high-energy particles, Chen Ming immediately contacted the factory director through the terminal. As soon as the communication was connected, Chen Ming heard the extremely angry and irritable voice of a middle-aged man from Laowu. "What the hell are you doing? What are you talking about? Your troops jumped away in front of Yue, and I can't say anything, right? You must give me an explanation. All the money we have spent for so many years is fucking given for nothing." The factory director whispered to Chen Ming in the gap between the middle-aged man's cursing. "Xiao Mu is still alive. The director is angry and can't say too much for the time being. If you have a chance to go and see if Xiaowen is still alive, he is on duty tonight." "Okay," Chen Ming responded casually. Anyway, he responded, but he was not sure whether he would do it or not. "So what is the situation now?" The factory director sighed slightly and said softly, "I'll send you a message." After saying that, he hung up the communication. Soon a message was sent over, and the factory director summarized the current situation of the space station. In short, after Yue confirmed the coordinates and orbit of the space station last time, he directly attacked the space station through the jump engine. Because the space station had already sought military support and had just contacted to indicate that the military would arrive soon, it was a little careless for a while and was caught off guard by the surprise attack. However, as long as the shield of the space station was open to hold it back, we would definitely be wiped out once the military arrived. But the military suddenly ran away for some unknown reason, which made the space station very embarrassed. However, the shield was at least successfully opened, and the space station would not fall in a short time. Otherwise, the director would not be arguing with the military at this time. The situation was roughly understood, but Chen Ming seemed unable to do anything now. It seemed that he could only wait for the battle to end. The last battle between the space station and Yue was barely a victory with acceptable losses, but this time, Chen Ming felt that even if the space station could win, it would definitely be a miserable victory. Just when Chen Ming had such thoughts, he suddenly saw the tail of the Yue cruiser flashing with the same azure glow as the last time Yue attacked. The cruiser also led other ships to have such a glow at the tail of the ship. The next moment, they suddenly disappeared from the front battlefield and appeared behind the space station. Flash. The name that Chen Ming subconsciously said was one of the top technologies independently developed by Tachyon Technology. The effect is obvious. Chen Ming, who had just run to the back of the space station, was directly exposed to the range of the Yue fleet. Fortunately, the shield of the space station was temporarily maintained. Chen Ming seized the opportunity in the last 10 seconds before the shield was closed, activated the highest intensity overload power grid, and instantly burst out at a faster speed than most frigates, hiding under the space station. The next moment, the shield of the space station was attacked by almost all the ships of the Yue fleet. The violent fluctuations made Chen Ming a little worried whether the shield could be shut down before overloading. Fortunately, things did not develop in the worst direction. The space station did not suffer from the fatal shield overload. But the shield was now forced to shut down, which meant that a large number of Yue ships had rushed into the shield protection range, beginning to cause damage to the space station. Just when Chen Ming was about to run to the other side of the space station, a Yue destroyer that had been floating on the edge of the Yue fleet and was nearly 200 meters in size suddenly gave up attacking the space station, but suddenly began to accelerate very purposefully. Its target was Chen Ming's iron ore. Although the Yue destroyer was large in size, its design was much better than that of civilian ships such as the iron ore. The speed of the spacecraft was not slower than that of the iron ore, which had already turned on the overload power grid. Almost instantly, the iron ore was brought closer to it, and then a ball of violently flashing arcs was launched from the front of the ship, which was a bit wide. The iron ore didn't even touch the arc ball, and all the equipment on the spacecraft suddenly shut down, and a ball of electric sparks even suddenly burst out on the control panel. This was an extremely high-intensity electromagnetic pulse. Chen Ming made a quick judgment and immediately activated the repair function of the panel. But repairs take time, and the destroyer had already approached the iron ore in this time. In addition to the tension of facing an almost overwhelming situation, Chen Ming was also full of doubts. Because the actions of this Yue destroyer were very strange. It did not attack Chen Ming directly, but instead opened the mouth on its belly like some deformed monster. It opened the bloated cabins in front of the spacecraft and swallowed the iron ore, which was damaged by the electromagnetic pulse, directly into its belly. Chen Ming understood it all at once and immediately realized that he could still be saved. This ship was not here to destroy the iron ore again. It was here, as Old Wu had said to him before, to capture human ships. The iron ore was completely swallowed before it repaired the equipment damaged by the electromagnetic pulse. Chen Ming quickly activated the searchlight on the outside of the spacecraft and could see that the iron ore was surrounded by various complex mechanical equipment. Before Chen Ming had time to see clearly what equipment was inside the spacecraft, he saw a sudden whiteness in front of him. The electromagnetic pulse in the cabin of the Yue destroyer was stimulated again, and the iron ore, which had just been repaired, was paralyzed again. The entire cabin fell into darkness again. And the iron ore, which had just been paralyzed and unable to operate, had not had time to be repaired again and suddenly moved under the force of the outside world. It seemed to be firmly fixed to the center of the destroyer by the electromagnetic chain. Some mechanical sounds came from outside the iron ore, as if the Yuhui destroyer had attached some equipment to the iron ore and wanted to conduct a more detailed scan or other operation on the iron ore. Chen Ming's nervousness has reached its peak, and his heart rate is even more difficult to control. He knows that if he doesn't move, he will definitely have no more chances. So he immediately took out the cutting tool from the repair kit he brought with him, forcibly cut open the front window of the iron ore, and climbed out through the cut hole. In a zero-gravity environment, he stepped on the porthole of the iron ore and jumped out in the direction where there was no mechanical sound just now. With an extremely high heart rate, Chen Ming pressed his hand on the hull of the Yuhui destroyer. New spaceship signal detected, whether to change the brain control signal connection. Current number of connected spaceships, 1/1. Chen Ming's hand on the hull has already felt a lot of vibrations spreading towards him. At this critical moment, it shouted without hesitation, "Change." All the movements of the Yuhui ship suddenly stopped. At this time, Chen Ming's brain was completely unable to think because of the rapid consumption of mental power and the continuous increase of fatigue, and he fell into complete chaos. Chen Ming used his remaining consciousness to hold on, resisting the pain of his brain tearing apart after his mental power was exhausted. He knew that if he couldn't hold on, he would definitely die here today. So even though his brain was about to split apart with pain, he still held on. After an unknown period of blurred consciousness, Chen Ming gradually woke up. He found that he had successfully controlled the Yuhui destroyer. The panel of the Yuhui destroyer was now floating in front of Chen Ming. Ship panel. Ship name: None. Type: Refractive class unmanned destroyer. Radiant energy capacity: 0/4500. Radiant energy dissipation: 300. Fuel reserve: 97%. Port side weapons: tactical laser cannon, instantaneous HPD laser cannon. Starboard side weapons: tactical laser cannon, instantaneous HPD laser cannon. Top weapons: ion beam. Armor: radiant energy resonance armor. Engine: Afterglow heavy destroyer class custom engine. Internal cabin: electromagnetic capture cabin. Important equipment: Afterglow Gamma AI Core, operating, Control System Module, operating, Landing Module, operating, High Energy Focusing System Module, operating, Hyperspace Channel System Module, operating, Full Width Shield Module, operating, Target Positioning System, operating, Radiation System, operating, High Frequency Electromagnetic Pulse Generator, operating, Electromagnetic Pulse Amplifier, operating, Long-Range Scanning Detection System Module, operating. The first thing Chen Ming noticed when he saw the panel was not the Gamma AI that controlled the refractive class, but the two extra lines of data on the panel: radiation capacity and radiation dissipation. This is a set of power system-like existence based on the high-intensity weapon system used by professional combat ships and the shield system. When the dedicated spacecraft combat weapons and shields are used, some radiation energy will be generated that will continuously vibrate inside the spacecraft power grid and affect the normal operation of the spacecraft. If these radiation energies are not discharged, it will cause problems such as overload and circuit breaker of the power grid. Therefore, the role of the radiation energy system and its own concept are very simple and clear. As long as the radiation value is not full, the powerful weapons of the combat spacecraft can fire at will and maintain the existence of the shield until the radiation dissipation can no longer keep up. In fact, there are more detailed distinctions in radiation, but Chen Ming's main job was to repair the space station and the ships of the caravan or ordinary civilians, and he did not have a deeper understanding of combat ships. Things in this regard may need to be checked or actually used to understand. But in short, Chen Ming is very clear about the importance of the radiation system. It is the guarantee of the combat effectiveness of the spacecraft. And it is not the most important equipment. The most important equipment on this Yuhui destroyer is the Yuhui Gamma-class AI core, which is the brain of the entire spacecraft. Chen Ming is now unable to suppress his emotions. It is not the tension just now, but the excitement of controlling a combat destroyer, and also with some excitement that it has been confirmed that the Yuhui AI core can be completely controlled through the panel. Chen Ming has now confirmed that the Yuhui AI core is also controlled by his panel. Although the control method is different from what Chen Ming imagined. It is not like a weapon that can be controlled at will. It is more like a computer on a spaceship. Chen Ming can control the spaceship himself or let the computer control it. It is just that the operation of the spaceship computer is restricted to the program's rules, that is, to follow human instructions. The operation of the Gamma AI core has no such restrictions. It has complete consciousness and is not restricted by the program framework. However, it is now on a spaceship controlled by Chen Ming, so it must now follow Chen Ming's rules. All orders from Chen Ming must be accepted, and all tasks from Chen Ming must be attempted to be completed. Simply put, the AI core controlled by Chen Ming is an absolutely loyal subordinate, and its ability is far superior to any ordinary person. Chen Ming actually had a crazy idea in his heart at this time, but he did not show any expression, and he also suppressed this idea deeply in his heart. The iron ore was repaired for the second time at this time, and Chen Ming immediately sent a communication request directly to the Yuhui destroyer. After the communication was connected, Chen Ming heard a voice similar to the emotionless voice of the terminal greeting him. Hello. Hello. Do you know your current situation? Chen Ming responded and asked the same question as he asked the other Yuhui AI core before. The Gamma AI of the refraction class also answered very honestly, I must now obey your orders. Chen Ming finally smiled and said, not bad. The Gamma AI suddenly asked out of curiosity, how did you do this? As far as I know, no individual of Yuhui has ever been forced to give orders. Chen Ming thought about his panel and said, if I say it's psychic power, do you believe it? I believe it, thank you for your answer. It fell silent, waiting for Chen Ming's instructions. Chen Ming was naturally not polite and said, I need you to make my safety the highest priority and help me hide my situation in your UA fleet. Received. The Gamma AI controlled the refraction class to start the activity. And Chen Ming was quietly observing the records of the spacecraft. Found that the Gamma core quickly reported a sentence to the cruiser of Yuhui. Capture successful, the crew of the ship died, and the ship is worthless after investigation. The cruiser responded with only a short sentence. Continue to look for suspected valuable targets. Then there was no follow-up, everything was normal. The cruiser did not make any other comments on the content of the refraction AI's reply. This means that the refraction AI controlling the other Yuhui did not find that the refraction had been controlled by Chen Ming, and they still believed that the refraction was one of them. After the contact was completed, the Gamma AI continued to control the refraction and began to swim away to the edge of the battlefield with the cover of other ships. It was indeed following Chen Ming's instructions. Is this the power of the panel? Chen Ming sighed in his heart with some tastelessness. At least he should not die in a short time. But the next problem also appeared in front of Chen Ming immediately. He was only in the belly of the refraction, and the protection of the refraction was not targeted by other Yuhui. The dangerous situation was not completely resolved. The Gamma AI could take him to the edge of the battlefield, but it could not leave the battlefield to a safe place in the next step. Because the space station would attack Yuhui's ships indiscriminately. Moreover, Chen Ming couldn't contact the space station directly in this situation. Whether they believed it or not was a question. Even if they believed it, how could he drive Yuhui's ship to get there was also a question. Chen Ming suddenly asked, Gamma, what if I ask you to take me away from the battlefield now? Gamma AI immediately replied, the inspector's ship will destroy us immediately. It is recommended that you don't do this. You actually have inspectors? Each of us has his own consciousness and will. Being afraid of death is also a kind of thing. After getting a definite answer, Chen Ming had no choice for a while. He had to wait for a while, waiting for the right time to leave. Whether he ran away directly or drilled into the space station, he had to wait. Speaking of which, Chen Ming suddenly thought of a question. Why did this refraction-class ship target him? Why did it capture a civilian ship that was probably worthless? So Chen Ming asked directly, "Why did you try to capture my ship?" Gamma AI still gave an answer almost instantly. "Your ship armor is very special. Bayun steel accounts for only about 1% of the alloy." Oh! Chen Ming suddenly remembered this common-sense thing that he had forgotten all along. After all, after having the panel and completing the forced transformation through the panel, many things that should not be done under normal circumstances were classified by Chen Ming as things that can be done. This includes 1% Bayun steel. Bayun steel is a very good composite material. A little bit of it added to any other material can greatly improve the strength of the material. And only a little bit is needed. Too much Bayun steel will cause a cliff-like drop in the improvement of alloy strength. Therefore, the amount of Bayun steel added to general alloys will not be too much. However, the difficulty of implementing the composite technology of Bayun steel and other materials is very high. How to make the proportion of Bayun steel in the alloy lower is a problem that has been studied for a long time. Ordinary composite methods such as rolling and explosion cannot make Bayun steel and alloy materials evenly composite. The crushing method will make Bayun steel lose some properties when it is crushed into powder, and there is no material that can perfectly combine with Bayun steel if it is melted. Therefore, the proportion of Bayun steel in common Bayun steel alloys is about 20%. And Chen Ming's 1% Bayun steel is simply a mixture of the best cost-effectiveness and the most advanced alloy technology. So the refraction level who scanned this point came to Chen Ming. Chen Ming knew the reason why the refraction came to capture him. But unfortunately, it didn't mean much to his current situation. He could only continue to wander on the edge of the battlefield with the refraction, observing the development of the battlefield situation. The situation on the battlefield was actually tilting towards the space station. The biggest problem of the space station was its mobility, so its firepower was definitely not comparable to that of a cruiser. After losing 4 space arms, the space station destroyed most of the Yue fleet. This time, Yue did not fight desperately like last time, but withdrew from the battle range under the leadership of the cruiser. The refraction class where Chen Ming was naturally among them. The space station also suffered heavy losses, so there was no intention to pursue. Yue only left a few frigates and withdrew from the battle area. Just after the Yue fleet left the battle area, Yue's cruiser suddenly issued an order. Let all ships adjust their posture, resonate the engines, and prepare for the jump. Chen Ming quickly asked Gamma AI something he didn't know. Can the jump stop before the last jump? Once the jump resonance starts, it can only continue, and our mission is not over after the jump. Until a mission is completely over, we have no chance to move freely. Chen Ming couldn't help but sigh and said, "I'm curious if you have your own life?" Yes, our database stores a lot of information from humans. We select what we are interested in downloading and gradually learn over many years. Learning accompanies us throughout our lives. Afterglow loaded on ships like me usually follows the supply ship. Every day I spent my studies, and I went to participate in the task. We can assign ourselves through learning and assessment. The job we like is our life, and our life is our favorite work. We can feel the meaning of existence from it. Send. So Chen Ming asked, "Do you know the specific situation of the original AI rebellion?" I did not have detailed information in my database. Only humans tried to destroy the surplus. At that time, the first batch of awakening ancestors escaped the human empire with our production technology. Gamma AI's speech was obviously conflicted with the human empire history books. However, Chen Ming did not directly say that the Gamma AI was lying, but just said, "What I know is different from what you said, but I will not deny your answer. I think we cannot get the truth about such historical events now." I agree with you. Then let's do it. Chen Ming sat back in the chair in the captain's room of the Iron Ore. He can only cooperate with the Yue cruiser now. If he does not cooperate, Even if Chen Ming really finds a chance to stay near the space station, he feels that there is a high probability that he will be captured by the space station. It is really hard to say whether this refraction will still belong to him at that time, and the management of the space station will definitely investigate the reason why Chen Ming can control the refraction level. In this case, it is not certain whether Chen Ming can save his own life. All his previous arrangements will become empty talk. And now the Yuhui cruiser and the space station are not exchanging fire. The large bearing point of the space station has also been idle. Both sides have the ability to destroy a destroyer in an instant, and the slightest accident may lead to the destruction of the ship and the death of people. Chen Ming is unlikely to gamble with his life. So it's better to just follow the afterglow ship. Both the refraction and the iron ore have hyperspace channels, so they can always find a way back if they have a chance. Besides, when Chen Ming came out, he blew up the wall of the space station with a missile. Although the dock was supposed to be demolished by Yu Hui, Chen Ming was definitely guilty. It's okay to go out and avoid the limelight. Anyway, he had prepared enough supplies before, enough to support at least a year of sailing, so it's not a big problem to go out and hang around for a while. So where are we going to jump this time? RM, 2-star system. It sounds familiar. Chen Ming recalled it for a while, and then his eyes suddenly widened. Because this star system is the star system where the Rainbow Star that Chen Ming left half a year ago is located. Chen Ming was stunned for several seconds after hearing the target location mentioned by Gamma AI. His mind was full of thoughts about what was in the galaxy where Reimu was located, attracting the attention of the military, Yue, and even the Cinda Company. However, Chen Ming immediately realized that he didn't seem to have to think about it himself. Gamma, what is your mission plan this time? Why do you want to attack the pirate space station first and then jump to another place? What is in the RM2 galaxy? Gamma AI answered immediately as before, I don't know, because all missions are notified in stages. The first phase of the mission is to attack the pirate space station, and I did not participate. The second phase of the mission, that is, this time, is to launch another attack on the pirate space station. The third phase of the mission will be notified after the second phase of the attack is completed and the jump to the RM, 2-star system. So far, I don't know what the next phase of the mission will require me to do. And I am just completing the mission, and I have no idea about the purpose of the mission. So I can't answer your question exactly. Chen Ming shook his head with some regret. If even the Gamma AI, the individual of Yu Guang, could not give an answer, then he could only wait for the jump to begin. Chen Ming put all the images captured by the high-precision camera of the refraction class in front of his eyes. Soon, the environment around the refraction class began to change. Although the ship did not move, the starry sky that Chen Ming could see was suddenly stretched, and it kept flying towards the back of the refraction class like a stream of light. This strange scene lasted for about 10 seconds. The starry sky returned to its original state again. The jump was over. The Yuguang fleet arrived at a position that was still some distance away from the RM, 2-star system, and did not jump directly into the galaxy. Chen Ming took advantage of this moment to carefully observe the galaxy where Ruemu was located. In this galaxy, in addition to Ruemu, there are a total of 3 planets orbiting around the star. The 4 planets from the inside to the outside of the galaxy are a high-temperature rocky planet, Ruemu, and an ordinary barren planet. And a gas giant with star rings like Ramu. If Chen Ming's iron ore and the sensors of the refraction class are not wrong, then there are a lot of ships fighting near the orbit of the gas giant around the star. One of the parties in the battle is definitely Yu Hui. As for the other party, Chen Ming probably knows who it is. A few seconds after the jump ended, the order of the Yu Hui cruiser was suddenly sent to the refraction class. Instead of joining the battle directly, all the Yu Hui ships that had just retreated from the battlefield with the pirate space station were given an hour of rest time. And the repair ships responsible for logistics maintenance started working. Then, the second message was sent. It was the requirements of the tasks to be performed after the rest, and some explanations related to the tasks. The task requirements were very simple, not what Chen Ming wanted to join the battle to assist Yu Hui in attacking the other party. Instead, they took advantage of the time when they were fighting to directly raid a small outpost belonging to the human military located in the orbit of the gas giant planet. There's actually an outpost here? Chen Ming is very confused now. He doesn't understand why the military clearly has a small outpost in the galaxy, but they didn't find him before. It's normal that the sensors of the iron ore can't find the small military outpost, but it's definitely abnormal that the military sensors didn't find the iron ore. Even if there is a planet in the orbit, even if there is a different orbital period, the outpost may be far away from Ramu. But Chen Ming drove the spacecraft back and forth between Ramu and the mining space station so many times, and it was too outrageous that he was not discovered. Unless someone in the small outpost was lazy and didn't take the scanning and detection work seriously. But this can only barely explain the situation Chen Ming encountered. If things are not as he thought, then the problem may be big. Following this line of thought, Chen Ming actually hoped that Yu Hui's action this time would be successful. As long as the outpost was destroyed, the possibility of his existence being discovered by the military would definitely be further reduced, which would definitely not be bad for him. While Chen Ming was constantly thinking about it, Gamma AI suddenly answered the question that Chen Ming had just subconsciously asked. Yes. It obviously read the somewhat long mission information sent by the cruiser AI faster than Chen Ming, and began to explain to Chen Ming, this outpost is a small outpost of the human military used to detect the collection of sky steel. Chen Ming was slightly stunned when he heard what Gamma AI said and asked, "Do you mean that there is a sky steel vein in the orbit of the gas giant planet?" "No, there are no veins of sky steel." Chen Ming was stunned again. Although he often used sky steel as a material, he was not very clear about the formation of sky steel ore. He only knew that sky steel was indeed smelted from ore, and he had done it himself, that's all. Gamma Core heard that Chen Ming didn't know about this, and continued to explain to him, sky steel ore comes from a space creature called Alturan sky eel. The body length ranges from about 20 meters to 80 meters, and it survives by absorbing the gas on the surface of gas giant planets. They will eat various asteroids containing metal minerals, and after a special reaction with the substances in their bodies, the output is sky steel ore containing many impurities. Chen Ming immediately recalled the piece of sky steel ore he found in the ring of Ramu before. At this time, although he did have a little disgust for sky steel ore in his heart, it was actually nothing more. At least the sky steel ore doesn't look like any feces, and the price of more than 1,000 per gram of sky steel after smelting is indeed enough to make people ignore any of its other shortcomings. Anyway, Chen Ming has seen similar things in his previous life. What bird's nest is the saliva of swallows, and cat feces coffee is even more outrageous. So Chen Ming is not too averse to things like sky steel that need to be smelted before they can be used. He quickly accepted the fact that sky steel is the feces of the Alturan sky eel. Gamma AI didn't know what Chen Ming was thinking, and it continued to concentrate on explaining the situation of the mission to Chen Ming. The purpose of the raid mission is to raid the warehouse of the outpost, where there is a batch of sky steel ingots that the human army has been storing. After that, we can decide whether to try to capture the Alturan sky eels living in the ring of the gas giant planet according to the battlefield situation. My next mission is the same as before. Still wandering around the edge of the battlefield, looking for opportunities to capture valuable ships of the army. Chen Ming silently digested the content summarized by Gamma AI for him, calmed down a little, and said, "I got it. Just like before, give my safety the highest priority, and you can do the rest yourself." Got it. Once your current raid is completed, you should have time to move around, right? Gamma AI replied, "Yes. Normally, we will first reach our distribution point through the resonance of the jump engine, far away from the human empire, and then we will have free time." So do you need repairs now? No, the refractor is in good condition and only needs a small amount of fuel. Okay. Chen Ming exhaled and calmed down. But his mind was not idle. It happened to be rest time now, with nothing to do. Chen Ming planned to simply study the functions of this refractor and think about how to use it later. Several equipment and systems on the refractor that are worth studying were listed by Chen Ming. They are the electromagnetic capture cabin, high-energy focusing system module, full-angle shield module, high-frequency electromagnetic pulse generator and electromagnetic pulse amplifier, and long-range scanning detection system module. These are all the equipment that Chen Ming can research and develop. Among them, he feels that the electromagnetic capture cabin has the greatest development potential. Chen Ming has now personally confirmed that 3 escort ships can be parked inside the electromagnetic capture cabin of the refraction class. And those various types of equipment used to investigate captured spacecraft only need to be slightly modified to do other things. For example, to modify and repair spacecraft. In this way, the refraction class can completely serve as a small dock. Moreover, the refraction class itself is not a dedicated combat ship, and those electromagnetic pulse equipment are clearly for auxiliary use. So it can also cooperate with other ships to adapt to different situations. If mining is needed, Chen Ming can directly control the iron ore to go out. If fighting is needed, Chen Ming can prepare a special combat ship. In other situations, he can also prepare ships with different functions. Anyway, Chen Ming can change the controlled spacecraft at any time, so modifying the cabin is definitely the most valuable option. That is, Chen Ming must be prepared for the possible rebellion of the Gamma AI after it breaks away from his forced control. But the way to deal with it is actually very simple. That is to completely remove all the offensive means of the Gamma AI on the cabin, so that Chen Ming can safely switch back the control authority of the spacecraft at any time. If he wants to transform the electromagnetic capture cabin of the refraction class into a cabin for parking the spacecraft, then the attack on the interior will be completely unnecessary. Chen Ming was thinking about the modification plan, and half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. He wanted to continue thinking about more complicated modification methods, but at this moment, the refraction class suddenly shook slightly. The Gamma AI immediately informed Chen Ming of the specific situation. It is the maintenance ship that is refueling the refraction class. Okay. Chen Ming replied casually and glanced at the situation outside the refraction class. After confirming that nothing was wrong, he didn't care too much about his thoughts being interrupted. Anyway, he had almost planned the transformation ideas just now, and he only needed to fill in more detailed steps later to completely complete the transformation plan. Chen Ming stood up from his chair, stretched his stiff body a little, and his hand unconsciously touched the control panel of the iron ore. Just like when he encountered a spaceship that had not been connected before, a prompt suddenly appeared in Chen Ming's mind. But this time the prompt was a little different from the previous prompt. New spaceship signal detected, whether to add a new brain control signal connection. Currently connected spaceships, 1/2. Connectable spaceships, iron ore, small civilian mining cargo ship, Sentinel, Sentinel-class civilian armed frigate. In an instant, Chen Ming's mind had several more questions. The number of connectable spaceships has increased? When? Just now? What does the following connectable spaceship mean? After controlling the refraction class, Chen Ming waited for the iron ore to be repaired and then used his consciousness to open the hatch and walked in. He had never touched the hull of the iron ore, so he had not noticed the situation. And after controlling the refraction class, Chen Ming did not think about switching back to the iron ore in a short time. After all, the Gamma AI is still in the Afterglow fleet, and he cannot guarantee that the Gamma AI can continue to obey his orders after the forced control of the panel is gone. So Chen Ming has never taken the initiative to touch the iron ore. But now, since there are 2 spaceship control numbers, it seems that he does not need to unlock the control of the refraction class to control a new spaceship. And if Chen Ming did not misunderstand the meaning of the third line, he seems to be able to directly connect to the spaceship he once controlled. Otherwise, there is no reason for the Sentinel class to appear on it. As for the earlier pirate Sentinel class, it should have been dismantled in the last Afterglow raid, so it is not displayed on it. Try it? This idea flashed through Chen Ming's mind, and he wanted to connect to the iron ore and see if it was really possible to connect remotely. But he suddenly remembered that there was no such prompt when he had no empty space for the control of the spacecraft before. Is it possible that this remote connection function is only available when there is an empty spacecraft control position? So Chen Ming slowed down his movements a little and chose to connect to the Sentinel class of the pirate space station half a light year away. After a little mental consumption, Chen Ming clearly felt that the Sentinel class was under his control. He then turned on the camera of the Sentinel class and observed the surrounding environment. At this time, the number 30 space arm where the Sentinel class was located was still half missing like before. The remaining half was full of high temperature and high heat, and molten iron was everywhere. Because of Chen Ming's previous plan, the Sentinel class was parked in the maintenance plant. Therefore, when the dock was attacked by the tachyon spear, the maintenance plant was not affected, and the Sentinel class was safely preserved. Chen Ming did not rush to control the Sentinel, but first moved the real-time transmission of the Sentinel to the side and put his hand on the iron ore. The prompt appeared again. New spaceship signal detected. Do you want to change the brain control signal connection? Current number of remaining spaceship connections, February 2nd. Changeable connected spaceship, iron ore, small civilian mining cargo ship. The content of this prompt made Chen Ming feel that he should be able to switch the control of the spaceship at will. He tried it directly, canceled the control of the Sentinel, and switched to the iron ore. After a little consumption of mental power, Chen Ming could clearly feel that he was gradually losing control of the Sentinel, and the iron ore was soon under his control. After getting a satisfactory result, Chen Ming continued to switch the control back to the Sentinel. Then he began to contact Lao Wu with the communication equipment on the Sentinel. Although the Sentinel was under Chen Ming's control, it was still impossible to get Chen Ming's voice across half a light year. So Chen Ming could only communicate with Lao Wu using the voice system of the spacecraft, just like the refraction class. When the communication was connected, Chen Ming directly told Lao Wu how he met him and also mentioned the terminal and the boss. Lao Wu was silent for a while, probably considering whether the words in the strange communication code were worth believing. The content that Chen Ming emphasized played a role. Lao Wu did not doubt Chen Ming's identity too much, but said with some nostalgia or reluctance, "Xiao Mu, I have been looking for you. If you're still alive, can you come back? After this battle, we have a lot more tasks and we really can't finish them." Chen Ming was slightly relieved after hearing what Old Wu said, and said, "I'm outside the space station now, and I can't come back for the time being." Old Wu seemed to have noticed something and asked, "Are you not going to do what you did before with your captain?" Chen Ming looked at the Yue fleet outside through the refractive camera, and then looked at Xiaoshi lying in his helmet and said, "It's about the same. There is a Yue ship that looks pretty good. It will take us about a day or two to come back. Are you sure you can come back?" Chen Ming said very confidently, "Sure." "That's good." The communication channel was quiet for a while. Chen Ming suddenly asked, "By the way, do you know what I did at the dock before?" "What is it?" "Oh, you blew up the dock and ran away, right? I already know, but old Lu deleted the surveillance for you. No one knows except us. We can understand the emergency situation, and there will be no problem. Anyway, come back early. The task of cleaning up the battlefield is really troublesome. I'll do it as soon as possible." The communication ended. Old Wu, who was at the space station, looked up at the factory director sitting opposite him and said, "The signal source at the repair shop should be the Sentinel. Xiaomu should have modified the Sentinel class control system and then used some special method to remotely connect to it and send us a message. By the way, is it still uncertain what happened to his ship after it flew out?" The factory director shook his head and said, "The direct hit of the tachyon spear affected many of the space station's equipment, and the external monitoring was basically broken. Xiaomu deliberately avoided the weapon's firing range, so the weapon's matching positioning equipment was also I didn't take a picture of his ship." Old Wu shrugged and said helplessly, "There is no way. We can only wait for people to come back. We should go to work now. I will keep an eye on Xiaomu later. It's not us, it's you who go to work. I have other things to do." "What are you going to do?" "Meeting and talk to Old Wu." "Who?" You asked who? Then you must know what I want to talk to Old Wu about. Old Wu smiled, took a can of tea from the factory director's desk, stood up from the chair, and left the administration building. At the same time, Chen Ming finally waited for the rest time to end. The Yue fleet, which had been waiting outside the galaxy for a long time, finally started to move and began to accelerate to the orbit of the gas giant planet. As the distance shortened, Chen Ming quickly confirmed the situation on the battlefield through sensors. There are a total of 4 cruisers on Yue's side, all of which are exactly the same in appearance, with a fleet of destroyers and frigates with a number of more than 300. 1/5 of these small ships had been lost in the previous battle. The military also had 4 cruisers. 2 of them were the ruler class, which had the strongest frontal firepower and armor among all the cruiser models known to Chen Ming. There was also a defender class designed by Cinda, which was chosen by the military when it was bidding. The last cruiser was an aircraft carrier called the Mora class, which had extremely heavy armor, just like the ruler class. Although the aircraft carrier itself was not very powerful, it still occupied an important position on the battlefield by relying on fighters that were smaller and more flexible than frigates. The fighters carried by aircraft carriers were different from ordinary ships in design, and all designs were only for combat. The fighters abandoned most of the functions of normal ships, including long-term navigation, entering hyperspace channels, etc. Some even did not have life support systems and only relied on the driver's protective clothing to maintain combat time. Therefore, the combat capabilities of some fighters carried by aircraft carriers would be even stronger than frigates. Only in large-scale battlefields, due to the limitation of ship size and weapon range, fighters may not be able to adapt to the combat environment. Therefore, the existence of fighters is still very meaningful, and the aircraft carriers that carry and maintain fighters naturally have their own meaning. In small-scale battlefields, fighters often bring greater advantages than the same number of frigates. For example, now, although the number of destroyer and escort-level ships on the space station is much less than that of Yue, there are even some ships that look more complicated at the edge. Chen Ming estimated that they should be bounty hunters or mercenaries hired by the military, just to make up the numbers. In the case of insufficient reliable combat power, the military relied on the small fighters of the Mora-class aircraft carrier to be active on the edge of the battlefield, and pulled the situation back abruptly, and even had a tendency to push back. Because the shields of many ships are not like the pirate space station, which can completely protect themselves in the shield. Most spaceship shields are full with shields. Although they can rotate at any angle around the spacecraft, their deployment range is limited and their rotation speed is also limited, so they can only protect certain angles. Therefore, once the fighter planes are given the opportunity to go around, no matter how powerful the ship is, basically the only possibility is that the engine will be destroyed and shut down. And Chen Ming also noticed. Few ships of Yue are equipped with a large number of point defense weapons for small fighter planes and missiles. So all ships harassed by fighter planes must allocate part of the firepower of their main weapons to deal with those highly maneuverable fighter planes, and they may not be able to deal with them. So the frontal firepower of Yue was diluted. The military relied on fighter planes to continuously exert pressure on Yue's front line, especially the edge of the front line where the firepower was relatively weak. No matter where a front line begins to collapse, it may be directly flattened by a wave. The army is now doing it with the idea of relying on its own advantages to advance slowly. The idea is good, and there is no problem in execution. But another fleet of Yue has arrived. As the 5th cruiser belonging to the Yue side appeared within the sensor range of the 2 warring parties. The battlefield situation, which was originally somewhat inclined to the army, was reversed in an instant. The pressure on the military front suddenly increased, and they immediately shrank their formation, reduced the area to face the enemy, and protected the small outposts behind them more closely. The small outposts did not have powerful firepower and shields like the pirate space stations, but were just a space building similar to the mining space stations. In terms of combat, it can be said that it was dragging the 4 cruisers down. So in order to face the Yue troops who attacked from another direction, the outposts were protected from being attacked. After shrinking the defense line, the military directly turned around a ruler-class ship and took some other small ships that received orders to meet the second Yue fleet that attacked. The 4 large bearing points of the ruler class were equipped with 2 storm needles and 2 purgatory cannons that fired high-speed plasma heavy warheads and had terrifying destructive power against armor. And there are 3 medium-sized missile mounting points in front of it. The missiles launched can be directly detonated in the middle of the 2-stage propulsion, triggering a large cluster of high-speed kinetic spike warheads to shoot forward, which has the same terrifying destructive power on the shield. Such powerful frontal firepower made the newly joined Yue cruiser choose to avoid its edge. Relying on its own mobility and weapon range advantages through the 3 tachyon spears, it continuously consumes the ruler class. Although it is a bit strange to choose a combat method based on consumption for the raid mission, Chen Ming understands the current choice of the Yue cruiser very well. Because military ships have some very obvious characteristics: thick armor, sufficient firepower, and relatively poor maneuverability. Therefore, it is a very irrational decision for most ships to engage in frontal fire with military ships. Pulling the battle line through mobility is actually a good way to deal with military ships. And because most of the designs of military spacecraft have put a lot of effort into armor and firepower. As a result, other aspects of the ship, such as shields, are also lagging behind. When hit by the same attack, the radiation energy generated by the shield of the military ship will be much higher than that generated by the shield of the Yue ship. Therefore, exchanging the radiation energy used by the weapon for the radiation energy of the shield of the military ship is definitely a win for Yue. The shield consumes more radiation energy, so the weapon can use less radiation energy, and it can also reduce the pressure of frontal firepower in disguise. As long as the Yue cruiser can quickly break the shield of the ruler class through the disadvantage of the military ship's shield, the time lost now can be earned immediately. The 2 cruisers started a tug-of-war, and at the same time, on the other side of the military outpost. The 4 Yue cruisers are constantly putting pressure on the military after the military cruiser leaves. Because the military lost the firepower and shield of a cruiser, the front line is being eroded by Yue and is constantly retreating. It's just that their retreat was much slower than Chen Ming expected. He saw the problem at a glance. Because the battle line was shrinking, the battle area became narrower and the battlefield became smaller, so the fighter planes flying out of the aircraft carrier could play a greater role. Although the big ship was advancing step by step, the small boats below were being restrained, causing the pace of Yue's advancement to be delayed. If it weren't for the smaller battlefield and the increased consumption of fighter planes, the military might be able to regain some advantages in some areas. And the reason why the fighter planes performed so well is actually very obvious. Chen Ming directly asked the Gamma AI, "Don't you have point defense weapons on your Yue ships?" Faced with Chen Ming's slightly sarcastic question, the Gamma AI did not make any special comments and answered normally as before. Normally, there are. For example, the refraction class I control has 2 small point defense weapons. But before carrying out this raid, most of our ships have been modified, all defensive weapons have been removed, and all offensive weapons have been installed. Only auxiliary ships like mine will be equipped with a small amount of point defense. Chen Ming took another look at the scene of the Yue ship being harassed by fighters on the sensor and asked, "When you modified the ship, didn't you consider the existence of aircraft carriers and a large number of fighter planes in the military?" Gamma AI explained, "It is the commander's task to consider these things." I am not sure of his thoughts and his command intentions, but I can try to guess. Sometime before the attack on the space station, we had already launched an attack on the military outpost. In that attack, the military outpost used a total of 3 cruisers, which did not include the Mora-class aircraft carrier. The commander may have thought that the human military did not have other ship reserves, so he made such a decision. This is a failure in intelligence and tactics, and the commander must bear the responsibility. But at least the overall situation on the battlefield is still in our favor. As soon as the Gamma AI finished speaking, Chen Ming saw the tachyon lance of the afterglow cruiser he was following, which was exchanging fire with the ruler class, start the second round of shooting. The high-energy particle torrent hit the ruler class accurately. The concentrated fire of the 3 tachyon lances in the first and second rounds was not enough to withstand even the shield of the space station, let alone a cruiser like the ruler class. Before the laser beam of the second round of tachyon lance ended, the shield of the ruler class was completely unable to withstand it and was forced to shut down. The aftermath of the particle spear left a white molten mark on its front armor. However, the ruler class was not destroyed, nor did it suffer critical damage, and it could even continue to fire back. But the afterglow cruiser has another function, flashing. When the shield of the ruler class is shut down because it is about to be overloaded, the hull itself is at its most vulnerable. The flash engine at the tail of the afterglow cruiser was activated, and by causing resonance, it drove all the afterglow ships around, including Chen Ming's refraction class, to disappear in the battle line maintained by the ruler class in an instant. Appeared between it and the outpost behind it. Some of the afterglow ships rushed directly to the military outpost after flashing in place. And the other part, together with the afterglow cruiser, stabbed the military from behind. The ruler class began to turn as soon as the afterglow fleet disappeared, but its maneuverability was not enough to support it to complete this action in just a few seconds. The most vulnerable engine port of the ship was already being attacked by a large number of afterglow ships. The urgent situation made this ruler class directly open the shield. This was a wrong decision made by the commander of the ruler class. The main shield of the ruler class is not a full-width shield like the refraction class, but a directional shield with a larger range that can only be deployed from the front of the ship. Although the directional shield has a larger range than the full-width shield, the angle of the ruler class directional shield is not enough to cover its entire body. Therefore, in this case, it can only open the more flexible but less effective backup full-width shield. However, opening the backup shield is even worse than not opening it. The Yuhui cruiser did not even continue to attack the engine of the ruler class, but instead attacked the shield it had just opened. Almost instantly, the ruler class, which was about to overload its shield because the radiation energy was about to reach the upper limit, was completely overloaded. A huge amount of arcs covered the entire body of the ship, and all systems failed and shut down. It was instantly completely submerged by Yuhui's subsequent attacks. This ruler class was declared out. Next, it was a 5-on-3 situation. And at this time, many Yuhui ships had broken through the firepower network of the outpost and began to attack the outpost itself. Yuhui should have won. With such a strong tailwind, Chen Ming now doesn't even need to do anything, just wait for the battle to end. However, Gamma AI suddenly reminded Chen Ming at this time, we need to try to capture 1 to 3 ships. If there is no gain after a battle, we may be held accountable by the commander and arouse suspicion. Chen Ming thought about it and felt that there was nothing wrong with what Gamma AI said. After all, the advantage was so great. It was indeed a bit outrageous that Chu Guang did not capture a single military ship. So what should we do? Faced with Chen Ming's question, Gamma AI directly sent a copy of the Chu Guang class's operating manual to the Iron Ore, which made Chen Ming a little nervous. Forget it, just do it according to your own ideas. Received. The Chu Guang class started to move and began to fly very purposefully to the nearest place where there were spacecraft fighting. At this time, the overall battle line around the outpost presented an interlaced ring. On Chen Ming's side, Yuhui was inside and the military was outside. On the other side, the military was inside and Yuhui was outside. The small military ships that had just been bypassed by the flash were desperately counterattacking to protect the safety of the outpost. On the other side, the army that found its butt on fire also shrank its formation again and sent a group of small ships to rescue. Such a complex battlefield situation made the battles between small boats more frequent, more complex, and more chaotic. Such a situation is very suitable for the refraction class operation. And around the refraction class, there have been many military ships that can be tried to capture. Chen Ming also found several ships that he was interested in. So Chen Ming took the initiative to ask the Gamma AI, "What will you do with the captured ships in the end?" While controlling the refraction class, the Gamma AI responded, "Only those with scanning value will be handled by the capturer himself. Those with special value, such as your ship, will be arranged to be handed over later if captured successfully and sent to our colony for more detailed analysis and research." What about these military ships? Basically, they are only worth scanning. That is to say, I only need to salvage a few ships and scan the data for delivery, and I can keep the ships themselves. Yes! Chen Ming nodded slightly. He must not miss the opportunity to get benefits. It just so happens that he plans to transform the refraction class into a miniature dock, so now with the convenience of Yue and the refraction class, it will not be wrong to control a few frigates. And Chen Ming is now on the battlefield where Yue is fighting with the human military. The quality of the spacecraft that can fight here is definitely guaranteed, and it will definitely not be a castrated version of the spacecraft sold to ordinary people. Even Chen Ming can take the initiative to select the military ships that he likes or may be used in the future to capture. With the overall battlefield situation leaning towards Yue, it is not too difficult for him to do so. And according to Chen Ming's observation, among the military frigates, there are exactly two types of spacecraft that he is interested in. One of them is a heavy frigate with heavy armor and powerful frontal firepower. It is a model that Chen Ming has never seen, and the specific name is unclear. And the other one looks very similar to a frigate called the Gladiator class that Chen Ming knows. However, although the overall design of this kind of ship under the military is somewhat similar to the Gladiator class, it is very different from the Gladiator class that Chen Ming knows in some key places. Chen Ming remembers that the Gladiator class is also like most military ships, with heavy armor, rapid firepower, and relatively poor maneuverability. But now, although the military can also see two advantages, the disadvantages are almost all gone. Chen Ming was very curious about the situation of the ship that he had never seen before, so he put forward his requirements for the capture object to the Gamma AI. Gamma AI had no objection. Immediately gave up a military ship that could be captured immediately. Following what Chen Ming said, he began to look for opportunities to capture these two ships in the corners of the battlefield. Opportunities are something that can always be found as long as you look carefully. The refraction class only stayed near the front line for a few minutes. Chen Ming had already seen a heavy frigate that was overloaded due to the collapse of the shield, with arcs all over its body and no ability to resist, floating in space, and was about to be destroyed. Before Chen Ming could warn them, Gamma AI had already sent a signal to the nearby afterglow ships that caused the heavy frigate to overload, requesting assistance and suspending the attack. After receiving the signal from the refraction class, the afterglow ships immediately stopped. The refraction class was allowed to move forward and completely destroy all the electronic equipment of the ship through electromagnetic pulses and captured it. The people on the ship took advantage of the capture interval to get on the emergency escape pod and escape from the spacecraft. Neither Gamma AI nor other afterglow ships had the intention to actively attack the escape pods and let them escape. The heavy frigate soon stayed in the capture cabin with the iron ore. Chen Ming had not had time to check the heavy frigate that had just been captured. The opportunity to capture another ship had already appeared in front of him. This time the capture was even simpler. Because the engine of this ship had been paralyzed by the weapons of other afterglow destroyers, the people on the ship had already escaped in the escape pods. Only the ship itself was left there, and the refraction class only needed to go over and eat the ship. After the refraction class fixed the second ship inside the cabin through the electromagnetic chain, Chen Ming asked the Gamma AI, "Is the data of the two ships sufficient?" "Enough. I need to start the equipment to scan the two ships now and upload the data to the command. It may cause some vibrations on your ship. I hope you can understand." "It doesn't matter. Just continue." The mechanical equipment inside the cabin began to move. In a pile of machinery, Chen Ming couldn't go out directly to contact the two ships, so he just watched by the porthole. At this time, Chen Ming suddenly found that there seemed to be an escape pod stuck somewhere on the bottom of the heavy frigate, and it failed to be successfully launched. Chen Ming immediately asked the Gamma AI to take down the escape pod first and take it to the front of the iron ore. Through the translucent window of the escape pod, it can be seen that the person inside is dead. The inside of his protective suit helmet is covered with blood, and the surface of the helmet has been completely broken. It seems that it was caused by a collision or something similar. Gamma AI quickly completed the scan of the heavy frigate. There were no other bodies on the ship, and it should be just this unlucky guy. After waiting for the refraction class to scan the other ship and retract all the mechanical equipment, Chen Ming took the initiative to leave the iron ore, came to the escape pod, and opened it. After a simple search, he found a personal terminal and a military card inside. There was nothing else. The content of the personal terminal was locked, and Chen Ming did not have the energy to crack it for the time being, so he put it away and dealt with it later. At this time, the refraction class suddenly received a message from the Afterglow cruiser, asking the Gamma AI to report the capture. Gamma AI directly sent back the information of the heavy frigate that had been scanned. Then it responded with a sentence: "The scanning process of other ships is still in progress." The cruiser just sent a signal that the communication was over and did not continue to ask. However, since it had time to confirm the capture of the refraction-class ship, it means that the battle situation should have been determined. Chen Ming took another look outside. At this time, half of the military outpost had been destroyed. The warehouse had been opened long ago, and the batch of sky steel should have been obtained by Afterglow. The three cruisers that could still move seemed to have completely given up protecting the outpost, and were gathering the remaining fleet, protecting the living forces, and preparing to retreat at any time. Now Chen Ming really only needs to fish on the edge of the battlefield, and it will be enough to wait for the remaining sporadic battles to end. So Chen Ming directly put his hand on the hull of the heavy frigate. Transferred the control of the Sentinel class. Soon, the panel of this heavy frigate appeared in front of Chen Ming. Spaceship panel. Ship name: None. Type: Centurion-class heavy frigate. Radiation capacity: 0/900. Radiation dissipation: 75. Fuel reserve: 57%. Port side weapon: Noise cannon, damaged. Light needle, damaged. *3. Starboard side weapon: Noise cannon, damaged. Light needle, damaged. *3. Missile mounting point: Fire Snake focuses on locking missiles. Armor: Military heavy titanium alloy external armor. Engine: Military frigate grade standard engine. Internal cabin rooms: Captain's cabin, engine cabin, missile auxiliary operation cabin, ship weapon auxiliary control cabin, living cabin, storage cabin. Important equipment: control system module, damaged. Landing module, damaged. Hyperspace channel system module, damaged. Pseudo-gravity module, damaged. Directional shield module, damaged. Target positioning system, damaged. Radiation energy system, damaged. Damping field device, damaged. Missile auxiliary module, damaged. This Centurion class is almost paralyzed due to overload and subsequent electromagnetic pulse effects. However, as long as the equipment of the spacecraft is not missing, Chen Ming will be able to repair it sooner or later. Especially in the case that Chen Ming currently lacks combat capabilities, this Centurion with 2 medium-sized bearing points and 6 small bearing points must be repaired as soon as possible. But as soon as possible is not now. Chen Ming borrowed a little force from the Centurion and approached another ship. He also controlled it and opened its panel. Ship panel. Ship name: None. Type: Tachyon-modified Gladiator-class frigate. Radiation capacity: 0/1500. Radiation dissipation: 250. Fuel reserve: 75%. Port side weapon: Ion beam, operating. Starboard side weapon: Ion beam, operating. Missile attachment point: Left Cyber SRM Stinger missile. Missile attachment point, right Cyber SRM Stinger missile. Armor, white cloud steel alloy external armor. Engine, Tachyon Guard class custom engine. Internal compartments, captain's compartment, engine compartment, missile auxiliary compartment, auxiliary operation cabin, energy flow cabin, living cabin, storage cabin. Important equipment, control system module, in operation, landing module, damaged, hyperspace channel system module, damaged, full-angle shield module, in operation, target positioning system, in operation. Tachyon Specialized Radiation Energy System, in operation, Missile Auxiliary Module, in operation, Imitation Gravity Module, in operation, Plasma Thruster, in operation, High Energy Focusing System, in operation. After seeing the various data on the panel, Chen Ming suddenly understood that this fighter-class ship was a new model fighter-class ship improved by Tachyon technology. The installation of special equipment modules has eliminated the most criticized maneuverability problem of ordinary fighter-class ships. And a lot of modifications have been made to the radiation energy system of the spacecraft. The efficiency of radiation energy dissipation of this escort-class ship is even close to that of a destroyer. It's a pity that under the siege of more afterglow ships, this Tachyon-modified fighter-class ship did not play a big role. But there's definitely no problem with this fighter-class ship itself. The modifications on it alone were enough for Chen Ming to spend some time studying, not to mention its own combat capability. For Chen Ming, he would be satisfied even if he could only get this one ship. What's more, in addition to this Gladiator-class ship, there is also a Centurion-class ship parked next to it. There are even more Refractor-class destroyers outside. As long as the battle is over, he can return to the pirate space station with his full harvest. But many things don't go as people wish. Even though Chen Ming has been hiding at the edge of the battlefield, he is still targeted by two military ships, a destroyer and a frigate. After the military's front line was completely torn apart, these two ships could no longer return to the main force. And the three military cruisers that were ready to evacuate could not risk rescuing them, so their two ships were basically dead. After the people on the ship solved the opponent and found the situation, they had the idea of pulling a few Yue ships to die. And because Chen Ming took the initiative to stay away from the battlefield, there were no other Yue ships nearby to quickly support him. So these two ships targeted Chen Ming. The combat capability of the auxiliary ship of the Refraction class is definitely worse than that of other destroyers, so Chen Ming didn't think about fighting head-on. Anyway, Yue is the advantage now, and he only needs to drag other Yue ships to help him. But in the next moment, a very thick laser beam suddenly shot from a distance, instantly destroying the destroyer and frigate that were targeting the Refraction class. Then, the Yue cruiser that fired the laser sent a message to the Refraction class. Submit the analysis data as soon as possible. At the edge of the battle between Yue and the military, where the military fleet regrouped, the captain of the remaining ruler-class ship was standing in the bridge command room with a serious expression. As the fleet commander, while commanding the fleet to approach, he was also listening to the report from his deputy next to him. The emergency evacuation of the outpost has been completed. The rescue ship has just taken the last batch of people from the outpost on board. Most of the information has been saved. The ruler-class captain nodded slightly and said to his deputy in the interval after issuing an order, "Well, then prepare to retreat temporarily. As long as Yue does not have the idea of launching a large-scale war, he will not stay in our territory for too long. Wait until they leave, and then we will come back to deal with the remaining mess." Is there anything else that needs to be dealt with? Yes, about the problem of the Alturan empty eel group, Yue Mei. No. The captain interrupted his deputy and said, "Yue will not do such a thing. At most, he will take a few away. The empty fish will not be killed. When we come back to rebuild the outpost, we can collect and smelt them again. Just be careful not to be robbed again." The deputy did not refute, bowed slightly to the captain, and turned away. After a while, the deputy returned to the command room and said to the captain, "All ships have been assembled, and Yue has no intention of continuing the pursuit. Well, let's start. The captain ordered the entire ship to start the jump engine. The ruler-class cruiser was operating like a precision instrument. The captain continued to say to the deputy beside him, "You will back up all the old data of the outpost later. When we come back, we will rescan the galaxy as a whole and compare carefully to ensure that there are no loopholes for Yue to exploit." Yes! The military fleet quickly retreated through the jump. At this time, Chen Ming had just recovered from the shock of Yue's cruiser personally rescuing him and quickly realized some problems. The military was still in the process of gathering and retreating, not retreating. Yue and the military were still exchanging fire on the front battlefield. During the direct battle, the Yue cruiser was distracted by dealing with the military ships that were targeting the refraction class. If there is no problem here, Chen Ming will write the name upside down. So he immediately asked the Gamma AI, "Do you have any social relationships similar to humans in the Yue?" "Yes, why do you ask?" "Because I think you have a good relationship with the Yue who controls the cruiser." "Yes, he is my friend," Chen Ming said with a little puzzlement. Friends. Gamma AI seemed to have foreseen Chen Ming's reaction. As soon as Chen Ming finished speaking, he said, "I know it's strange from your human perspective, but it's true. If you need to understand, I can explain it to you now." "No, if you have data records, you can send me a copy. I can take a look when I have time." Gamma AI immediately sent a record to the iron ore. Chen Ming's mouth twitched, and he saved this record first and didn't rush to move it for the time being. Then he continued to talk to Gamma AI about other things. "Since the army has withdrawn, I have a question for you. What should we do with so many wreckages on the battlefield?" Gamma AI quickly replied, "They can only be left here. Although the military has been temporarily repelled, this is the border of the human empire after all, and the military will soon return with more ships. So we can't stay here for too long. We can only rest for a while, take away all the afterglow cores, take away the rest that can be taken away, and abandon those that cannot be taken away on the spot." Chen Ming got the response he wanted to hear and began to talk about his thoughts more. "What will be the consequences if I take those ships?" "I mean your afterglow ships." "There will be no consequences. Those ships have already been decided to be abandoned. It doesn't matter to us who takes them. Do you want to take another one?" "Yes." Chen Ming just took a closer look and found that the cabin of the refraction class can actually barely fit a relatively small frigate in. That is, after being filled, the 4 frigates will collide with each other, causing damage. But the damage caused by this collision is nothing compared to the value of a spaceship. Then Chen Ming can control one spaceship himself through the panel. That means an iron ore goes out and brings the other 5 spaceships back. Even if it is robbery, it is not this way of robbery. Chen Ming was still thinking about how to get a spaceship 2 days ago, but in the blink of an eye, he was able to build a small fleet by himself, but he was a little short of pilots. But if the ships are all there, then the problem of pilots is not easy to solve. So Chen Ming made up his mind decisively, taking advantage of the opportunity when the repair ship of the Yue fleet was collecting the Yue AI cores from the wreckage of various Yue ships. He picked up the ships that were scattered throughout the battlefield and did not look that badly damaged. Although Chen Ming could choose the ships of the military and Yue at will, he felt that the ships of Yue were very suitable for him in terms of control. So with 2 military ships already in hand, Chen Ming planned to choose Yue's ships for the 3rd and 4th ships. The refraction class followed behind the repair ship of Yue, and after the repair ship took away the AI core, it picked and chose the 2 ships and put them into the bag. Both ships were frigate level, one was of the Glimmer class and the other was of the Lumen class. Although Chen Ming wanted to find a destroyer, most destroyers were the targets of concentrated fire in the battle between small ships. If they were paralyzed, they would basically be destroyed, and it was impossible to find a relatively intact one. So Chen Ming could only choose the frigate as a second choice. After these 2 ships were dealt with, Yue's ships were almost assembled. At this time, Chen Ming could see that a Yue destroyer was handing over a sealed cargo hold to Yue's cruiser. It should be the sky steel collected by the military outpost during this period. Although the cargo hold looked like it was only about 10 cubic meters in volume, the density of sky steel was much greater than that of most metals. Chen Ming estimated that if it was full, there would be at least hundreds of tons of sky steel, and the value should be more than 100 billion imperial coins. Chen Ming felt a little hot-headed when he thought about it, but the protection of the 5 Yue cruisers made him know that if he really dared to move, he would definitely explode on the spot. Under the threat of life safety, Chen Ming quickly calmed down. Let the refraction class take the lumen class with repaired engines that it could not fit into the Yue fleet. The mission objectives have been handed over, so it is almost time for Yue to retreat. The jump engine started again, and the engine of the refraction class also resonated. After a longer jump process than before, Chen Ming appeared in an unknown galaxy. Next to the end of the jump, there is a space station orbiting a cold rocky planet. Gamma AI directly explained to Chen Ming, the space station is only used to confirm the identity of the ships approaching the planet and grant passage rights. The real gathering point is on the colony of the planet. Gamma AI took the initiative to increase the power of the sensor and scan the surface of the planet, allowing Chen Ming to see the large-scale industrial facilities on the planet, as well as the Yue spacecraft that were constantly taking off and landing. After observing for a while, Chen Ming found that the refraction class received a notification of mission completion, and most of the ships that jumped together had already scattered. It seems that now is the free time mentioned by Gamma AI. So Chen Ming pointed at the planet and asked the Gamma AI, "What is the significance of this colony to you?" If you're asking about the significance to the Afterglow as a whole, then the role of the colony is to collect and develop the resources of the planet and serve as the basis for installing large-scale industrial facilities. If you're asking about the significance to the Afterglow individuals, then the role of the colony on this planet is more similar to that of human cities. Since many Afterglow individuals exist in the form of ships, the cities belonging to our Afterglow are usually dominated by industrial facilities. For Afterglow individuals to replenish, modify, and repair their ships here. Chen Ming interrupted and asked, "No restrictions?" There are restrictions. Each Afterglow individual has a fixed amount of supplies every month. Only by paying a part of the quota can you exchange for the modified accessories and opportunities. Then this material quota is money for Yue. Chen Ming had a rough impression in his mind and continued to ask, "So you participate in the mission to obtain more materials?" Yes, in addition to the material quota, the mission rewards will also include mechanical chips or some human spoils. Chen Ming suddenly heard a key thing and immediately asked, "What do you need these for?" The mechanical life of the mechanical family is similar to our Yue, so the individual consciousness inside their chips can be assimilated by us to improve our computing power. Chen Ming's eyes subconsciously passed through the storage compartment of the iron ore, where 3 mechanical chips were lying. However, Chen Ming did not mention it in a hurry, but asked, "What about the same kind?" Gamma AI hesitated for a while before answering, "This is absolutely forbidden. Please don't let me do this." "I understand. I won't let you do this. To me, 2 Afterglow individuals are much more valuable than 1. Thank you. It's okay." Chen Ming responded casually and suddenly asked, "What should I do if I want to enter your colony?" "Report the situation to the space station first, and you can go down now. I just completed the mission and can go to the colony to collect the corresponding rewards, but I would like to ask you not to leave the spacecraft on the planet. I don't want to die yet, and I will definitely not do this, but I want to ask first, what is your reward for this mission?" 1 month supply quota and 3 Mechanical Clan Escort Class ship chips. Mechanical Clan Escort Class ship chips? Chen Ming's mind quickly flashed the 3 mechanical clans he killed at the beginning, and then imagined a mechanical clan frigate made of white cloud steel. Suddenly, his mind was full of curiosity and interest. "Then go down. I really want to see your Yue colony." "Got it." Take advantage of the time when the Gamma AI began to report the situation to the space station and then landed on the surface of the planet. Chen Ming directly took out the first Gamma AI core he had obtained, but the second one he put into use, which he had placed next to Xiaosher's nest before. Then he took the repair kit and left the iron ore. In the crowded cabin, he approached the Twilight class and switched the control of the Lumen class to the Twilight class. Gamma AI must have seen Chen Ming's actions and the other Gamma AI core in his hand. But it did not show anything. Chen Ming wanted to cut the hull of the Twilight class and install the AI core as before. The design of the Yuhui ship is one piece. Unless the hull is completely disassembled, it is most convenient to install the AI core by cutting and installing it directly and then repairing it. During this whole process, Gamma AI has been watching quietly. After the Gamma AI core was implanted and the spacecraft was started, Chen Ming also pulled the Twilight class's communication into the channel and took the initiative to say to the second Gamma AI core, "How do you feel? I specially installed you on your Yuhui ship." After a few seconds of silence, the second Gamma AI said, "I thought I would wake up again, but I didn't think it would be like this now." The corners of Chen Ming's mouth curled up a little. He understood Gamma AI's thoughts at this time very well. If Chen Ming sent a resume to a company and then woke up to find that the company's boss had signed a contract to sell him, he would probably have the same reaction. However, Chen Ming is not the core of the Afterglow AI who is looking for a job, but the boss. So he not only does not feel uncomfortable now, but even wants to laugh. After saying this, Gamma AI has also recognized the situation and said to Chen Ming, "Then how should I call you?" "Call me Mu Shui Kong, Mr. Mu, and besides you, I have found another of your kind. Say hello." The Gamma AI installed on the refractive level said at Chen Ming's request, "Hello." "Hello." I don't know if it's an illusion or something. Chen Ming seems to have heard a hint of gloating or sharing the same misfortune from the emotionless voice broadcast of the Gamma AI at the Twilight level just now. Chen Ming didn't care too much and said, "Then for my convenience, I will call the refractive class Gamma A and the microlight class Gamma B. As you wish." After completing this step, Chen Ming returned to the iron ore. Under the watchful eyes of the two Gamma AIs, the microlight class was repaired through the panel. Then he put his hand on the hull of the iron ore. The prompt to change the spacecraft appeared again. And this time, Chen Ming found that the prompt was different again. New spaceship signal detected, whether to change brain control signal connection. Currently connected spaceship number, 1/2. Connected spaceship, refraction class unmanned destroyer. Connectable spaceship, iron ore, small civilian mining cargo ship, Sentinel class civilian armed frigate, Lumen class unmanned frigate, Gladiator class, Tachyon modified Gladiator class frigate, Centurion class. Chen Ming blinked repeatedly to confirm that he was not mistaken. The number of connected spaceships on the prompt was followed by 1/2, and the newly added connected spaceship line only had the refraction class. However, immediately after the appearance of these 4 lines of prompts, Chen Ming's mind had another new line of content. AI-assisted connected ship, Glimmer class unmanned frigate. The Glimmer class, which was equipped with the Afterglow Gamma AI core, was not counted in Chen Ming's connected spaceships, but was counted in a new place called AI-assisted connected ships. Chen Ming immediately thought of a question at this time: why was the Twilight level included, but the refractive level was not included? The biggest difference between the two should be the difference in ship level. Since Gamma AI is the lowest level of Afterglow AI core, it is suitable for the same lowest level frigate-level ships. Therefore, after being installed on the refractive level, it was not counted in the AI-assisted connection ship because of the mismatch of the model or insufficient capacity. Of course, this is just a guess and Chen Ming is not sure what the truth is. But he immediately tried to connect the iron ore again. The number of connected ships on the panel became 2 halves, and there was no change in the others. The auxiliary link still exists, and Chen Ming actually controlled 3 ships when the maximum number of ship connections was 2. Chen Ming can now probably understand that this AI-assisted connection ship is different from the normal brain-controlled ship and is independent. In other words, as long as he can control a ship and then install an AI core of the appropriate level on the ship, then the pressure of controlling the ship will be transferred to the AI core, and Chen Ming only needs to bear the pressure of controlling the AI. The consumption of mental power to control a ship and control a ship through AI is definitely not at the same level, and therefore the AI-assisted connection ship does not affect the normal brain-controlled ship in turn. The meaning of this ability is very clear. The more AI cores Chen Ming has, the more spaceships he can control. So when Chen Ming looks at the scattered Yuhui ships around him, it's like seeing moving treasures. It's a pity that the Gamma AI core should only be adapted to the frigate level, and only the Beta AI can be adapted to destroyers. The Alpha AI can only be adapted to cruisers, and Chen Ming is not sure what the capital ships above need. Moreover, controlling a destroyer now requires Chen Ming to spend almost all of his mental power, so for him, cruisers are actually out of the question, let alone capital ships. So Chen Ming's target can only be set on frigates and destroyers for the time being. Now that the target is set, the next question is how to contact these ships with Yue AI cores. First of all, there is absolutely no chance for Chen Ming to personally contact Yue ships in space. And getting on and off ships in Yue's colonies is definitely a fatal act. Controlling other Yue ships through refractive electromagnetic weapons is also a clear suicide. In this way, Chen Ming really has no particularly good way to quickly contact and control Yue frigates on a large scale. But he thought again. In fact, he does not have to directly control Yue ships, he only needs the core as enough. Inserting the obtained AI core into other frigates should have similar effects. And there must be many AI cores in Yue's colony. Just now, Gamma AI said that most of Yue AI cores use ships as carriers, so there must be some Gamma AI using other carriers. It is definitely easier to deal with than ships, and finding them may be more suitable for his purpose. Wait. Chen Ming suddenly realized that this idea is even more excessive than touching Yue's ships with his own hands. Kidnapping Yue's AI in Yue's colony seems to be a more serious suicide than the previous idea. The advanced Afterglow AI may not notice that one or two Afterglow AIs are controlled by Chen Ming, but if Chen Ming really controls the Afterglow AI core on a large scale, it will definitely attract some attention. No matter how many frigates he has, it will definitely be a one-sided situation when facing cruisers. Chen Ming smacked his lips, slightly unhappy. It seems that his idea can only be postponed for a while. He must think of a good enough way to solve the problems he just considered before he can pry into Afterglow's corner. And Chen Ming knows that although the prompt just now did not show the number of ships controlled by the auxiliary AI, but controlling the AI core must also require a certain amount of mental power to maintain, so there is definitely an upper limit to the number of AI-assisted ship control. So Chen Ming thinks it is better not to have too much expectation for his sudden whim, at least not for the time being. Because he has to rush back to the pirate space station later, there are some things he must do at the pirate space station. As an employee, skipping work on the second day of work is something he has never done in his 2 lives. Moreover, Chen Ming had just told Lao Wu that he would go back in a day or 2. If he broke his promise and had a bad relationship with the people in the repair factory, it would not be good for what he was going to do later. But before returning to the pirate space station, Chen Ming had to find a place to rest temporarily. He didn't plan to drive all 6 ships back to the pirate space station in a grand manner, especially when there was a complete Afterglow destroyer, 2 Afterglow frigates, and 2 military ships inside. So he had to find a place to temporarily store these ships. And the best choice that Chen Ming came up with in his mind. It was around the Dark Cemetery. The Dark Cemetery was around the route of the hyperspace channel, not far away or close. Although there were a large number of asteroids, the valuable asteroids inside had been mined 30 years ago. Now, even if there is a ship with special mining equipment passing by, they may not want to go in and hang around. So it is a very safe place for Chen Ming. The only possible hidden danger is that he sank 3 merchant ships in the Dark Cemetery before. So Chen Ming did not plan to really enter the Dark Cemetery, but planned to go to the surroundings of the Dark Cemetery. Those lightless areas without stars and without any iconic stars or other landmarks are the truly safe hiding places. Before the refraction class landed in the Yue colony, Chen Ming had already considered all the things to do later. And he roughly calculated the time it would take to complete the things in the plan. Then he found that if he did not have any ideas about other AI cores, he even had enough time to observe this colony belonging to Yue on a non-habitable planet.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.